get you some top calls. The analyst action that we're focusing on this morning. First up, Wedbush has downgraded Lyft to underperform. Analysts there point to concerns about the impact of autonomous vehicle disruption. Shares down 4.5%. Next up, Truist raises its price target on.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell. We are live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, and simulcasting on X Spaces. You can also see both versions of the live stream on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. If you like the work that I do, please help support by donating on my website. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. In addition, you can be a paid member to my Patreon channel or my Substack. That way, you are helping support the free content that I provide. I don't put stuff behind a paywall, but please help support the work. You can also help support the work by sharing the links, asking your social media to follow me. You can follow me on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, Rumble, TikTok, Substack, Patreon, X, GETTR. So there's many ways to follow the work that I do. All the links are in the description of this video. So please share the links and ask your social media to follow me. I also have very great products out there. If you follow my advice and take the supplements the way I'm taking them, you're going to slow down the aging process and you're going to boost up your immune system. So let's just plug a couple products before we begin with the show today. Please go to my store and get these dual purpose deodorants. So for males or for females, you can get it in citrus or in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. They're made from essential oils from the Himalayas. Very high quality ingredients, has no aluminum, no baking soda. It's dual purpose. Use it as a daily deodorant, but it'll also help to detoxify your body. And when you do this, you're going to improve your immune system and your endocrine system. This is the best deodorant that you're going to be able to buy. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the dual purpose deodorants. In addition, go to my store and get the Cleanse or the Max 35. Max 35 is 35 parts per million, or Cleanse, which is 30 parts per million. Take it every day. Take a teaspoon a day. Swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds or 30 seconds, and then swallow it. What this will do is improve your oral cavity, improve your oral pharynx, and help with the mucosal barrier, improve your epithelial cells. When you do this, you're boosting up your immune system and you're neutralizing. It's very important to take every day. I've been doing this for over 5 years, every day. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day and then go back to your normal dose when everything's all clear. This will help to neutralize and help to boost up your immune system. Super important, especially during the winter season. So get the Cleanse or the Max 35. It's also part of my first pillar to slow down the aging process. Why? Because if you don't get sick, right? If you aren't chronically sick or you have something benign 2 or 3 times a year, if you mitigate that, then your body heals. It's not focused on trying to remodel the tissue that's been damaged through the benign sickness. So if you stop the chronic cold, you actually are allowing your body to heal in tissues that it needs to heal instead of focusing on that chronic issue. For example, something benign like the common cold may last for about 4, 5, 7 days, something like that, right? So 1 week. It takes 2 weeks to heal, to remodel. Even though you feel better, it takes 2 weeks for your body to really heal, microscopically at the cellular level, at the tissue level. So if you get sick 3 times a year, which is the average, 9 weeks out of the year, you're either sick or remodeling the tissue to repair. If you aren't sick that many times a year, then your immune system can focus on other things. Your body doesn't have to constantly try to remodel. This is part of the reason why if you see people that are chronically sick, even if it's benign because of the common cold or whatever, they age faster because they're building up free radicals, they have high inflammation, and the body has to remodel the damaged tissue. Don't get sick. And that alone will slow down the aging process. All right. I want to start with Dolan. Dolan is stepping down as cardinal because he reached the age limit. And I think it's Hicks that's going to be the new archbishop for New York. He's from Chicago. Let's listen into Fox News. This is pretty big for the New York scene, for the ones that don't know. And I knew Dolan, Cardinal Dolan. Right? I don't know Hicks at all.
And we notice those who
for Cardinal Dolan, and he really kind of helped shepherd you through your process, leaving the priest. Jonathan Morris is here, theologian and Fox News contributor. I want to talk about Bishop Hicks, but you're very close to Cardinal Dolan. You named one of your sons after Cardinal Dolan, and he really kind of helped shepherd you through your process.
Cardinal Dolan is an interesting guy. He's a I think some issues happened with Milwaukee. I think that's part of the reason why he ended up getting into the most important archdiocese in the United States. The guy that she's talking to, I believe, was a priest that stepped down. There's questions about, about this guy. Who knows? I don't know a lot of the details, but there was a reason. If it's who I think it is, he stepped down from being a priest.
Being the priesthood, he officiated your wedding to Caitlin. So you got to be sad today. I know I'm sad today.
I am sad, but only Cardinal Dolan, because of his intellect, his wit, but also his dignity and kindness, could say, yeah, I'm being replaced today, just before Christmas. What a great Christmas gift. Mm-hmm. That's because he knows that it's not about power in the end. It's not about authority. It's about a legacy that has to do with heaven. And I think many leaders can learn a great lesson from Cardinal Dolan. It's not only about when you leave. In this case, he was told when to leave by Pope Leo, but how you leave. And he said, I've come to know this man. Even in just these couple of days, I've come to appreciate and value him and love him. And I trust him. What a great thing to leave to your people, saying, I trust this person, you can trust him too.
Yeah, they're both from the Midwest, Cardinal Dolan and Bishop Hicks. But I mean, Cardinal Dolan has really become a New Yorker. I think in our hearts and in our minds, he loves this city. He loves the people of New York City. They have embraced him so wholeheartedly. And, I love that you pointed out first his intellect, because he has a razor sharp sense of humor, but he is a very, very wise theologian. His sermons are incredible.
And they're incredibly short, which makes them even better. But can I tell you, yes, big shoes to fill for Archbishop-elect Hicks. But can I tell you why New Yorkers and America loves Cardinal Dolan so much? It's not just because he has a great personality. It's because they trust him, because he's authentic, because he's genuine. And Archbishop Hicks does not have to be Cardinal Dolan. He can just be himself. And everyone I've talked to, and I've talked to classmates, I've talked to people who've known him and who have liked him, who have not liked him, they say he's a good man. And he loves Jesus. And that they're very happy for him, and New York is lucky to get him.
Very much look forward to seeing him. Let's just quickly play this soundbite real quick with Maria. And we're going to have Cardinal Dolan here tomorrow live at 3 o'clock.
Yes.
When you turn 75, any bishop, pretty soon he's going to be retired. So people know that, and they'll start writing you. So I got some requests, like to go to some universities, just to be on campus, maybe to take a sabbatical, maybe to teach a course. And I'm just going to kind of appreciate the chance to set my own schedule.
Well, we're so grateful to Cardinal Dolan for his incredible service here, and we look forward to speaking with him tomorrow. Jonathan, thank you so much for being here.
a lot of Christmas ahead at St. Patrick's Cathedral in the coming days before Christmas.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube.
All right, let's pivot over to what's going on last night. All right, last night, the big event was the Brown University killer was found with, my understanding is it was a suicide, in some sort of storage facility. Now, I'm not sure if he committed suicide because he was surrounded by the police, or they knew he was there and he already committed suicide. I don't know. I don't know the details about it. But what I do know is that they believe that he was the one that killed the two students in Brown, at Brown, and the MIT professor the next day. He is Portuguese. He ended up getting his green card through a lottery, which Trump is shutting down now. He used to live in Miami, Florida, or that was the last residence that he had. He was going to go into a Ph.D. program and didn't fully finish that Ph.D. program at Brown. So he knew the university. He was 48 years old, so roughly the same age as the professor at MIT. This individual wanted to get a PhD in physics. That seems kind of odd. And what was the deep connection between this individual that committed suicide, that was the perpetrator, and the MIT professor? Well, they're both Portuguese, but there must be some other reason. There must be some other reason. And I wouldn't be surprised that other people were targeted. Other people were going to be targeted. But that's pure speculation. Now, that's my understanding of what happened, right? Now, some people think that there's more to the story, that there's more of a grand conspiracy. I don't know. Are there more people involved, or was it just a lone wolf? I believe the law enforcement last night, when they had their press conference, was basically saying this was a lone wolf. But we'll never really know because he's dead. All right, let's play what was released 1 hour ago on Fox News.
I need to find my daughter.
Let's do what we do.
I will hunt you.
And into the Brian Yennis is live from Brown University's campus with more. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Waz. Nate was just saying police credit an anonymous tipster who called into the tip line on Tuesday, saying, frankly, that he had seen the shooter in the area just a couple hours before the shooting. That tipster also wrote on Reddit a description of a vehicle, a gray Nissan with Florida plates, just a couple blocks away from the engineering and physics building here on Brown University. Well, that anonymous tipster happens to also be the same man police released images of, and we're asking the public to help identify because of how close he was seen walking by the shooter in surveillance video. His name is John, a homeless man and former Brown University student who 2 hours before the shooting locked eyes with the gunman in the bathroom in the basement area across from the classroom where the shooting took place. John said he was suspicious of Claudio Neves Valente and followed him out of the building into the neighborhood where the two played a game of cat and mouse. This surveillance video shows the gunman running away from John, who was following him. John saw the gunman unlock his car, notice him, relock his car, and walk away. John confronts the shooter and says, "Your car is back there. Why are you circling the block?" The suspect responds, "Why are you harassing me?" Now, based on this tip, investigators say they reviewed surveillance footage and found a car matching that same description. Police then used flock cameras, license plate readers to identify the car. Neves Valente said he they said that he put a Maine license plate over his Florida license plate, which made it a little bit difficult, but eventually police traced that car to an Alamo car rental company in Boston. They matched the images, they traced the name, and that's where they were able to trace this Nevis Valente, to a storage unit under his name in Salem. Now, yesterday, I pressed police as to why a citizen is the person who noticed and grew suspicious of Nevis Valente when this person was here for at least a couple of weeks and walking around. Listen.
Why did it take a citizen to notice a suspicious person right next to Brown University and not the police? And also, how long was the vehicle parked where it was? And was it days, hours, minutes?
It appeared to be days as far as the evidence. Why would a civilian observe that to be suspicious? It's a great point. And I like the fact that you mentioned, and I'm bringing that up. That's what we should all be doing, right? And it's just personality. Some people are more interested in finding out what others are doing. In this particular case, this person decided that he wanted to, and I'm glad he did.
Investigators described John as an extremely articulate witness. John does happen to be a homeless man who was, we're told by a source, living in the basement area of the Barris Holly Engineering and Physics building, which of course opens up a whole new set of questions about the security of that building and why that was happening. But right now, John is the hero, and the AG says he deserves every bit of that $50,000 reward. Guys?
Yeah, clearly, I mean, Brian, he had the wherewithal and the information that led police directly to the suspect, and they praised him as they should. But you raised the question, why was a homeless man allowed to live in the basement of this college facility where the shooting eventually took place?
First of all, we have to assume that that's the true story. It might be a fake story. Second, even if it was true, you got to remember, there is this huge woke issue with these universities, especially at the Ivy League. You see homeless people all over the place in Harvard Square, which is the main train station to get to Harvard. You see homeless people all over the place at Kindle, the main station to get to MIT. So it's not surprising.
Yeah, it really brings up a lot of questions about the lack of security in that building. And the Brown University president, Christina
It's
Paxson,
not just the
was
lack of
pushed-
security. Wake up, dude. You have an administration, a student body, donors, an alumni that's woke, that thinks that it's okay to just turn the whole society into socialism, turn the society into, a Hooverville.
last night hard about this. We know in the affidavit that there are only 2 cameras outside of this building, and there was no security guard at this building, which was not atypical. So this building was never guarded. There weren't enough cameras. So
Right. Breaking news
so-
here. UMich final December consumer sentiment data, 52.9, estimate was 53.5. So consumer gauge of the economy, how they feel, their emotion, their pathos, it's lower than expected. All right, let's continue.
Unguarded, that they allowed somebody to live a homeless man to live in the building, an academic building. So again, John's a hero, but that brings up questions about security.
He is a hero in this case, but Brian, they also have to grapple with something else. The shooting takes place that Saturday. Sunday, they arrest and then cut loose this person of interest. Initially, they told us that there was no connection between the shooting and that happened on that Monday. But now that we know that there is a connection, they gave him some time because they stopped the search, right?
Yeah.
You know, they'll push back and say ultimately that was 24 hours and they were still looking at every single lead. But I will tell you this, the timeline that also is something that we got to really drill in on here is that a custodian in the Brown University Engineering and Physics building noticed Claudio Neves Valente on November 28th. That's 2 weeks before the shooting. So again, if a custodian thought that this person looked suspicious 2 weeks before, this person is walking around campus in and out of a building, where was Brown University Police? Where was the anybody?
Notice he has his arms behind his back the way he's walking. I mean, you probably can't see it very well with the lighting, but he has his arms behind his back as he's standing there walking.
And that would have said, you know what, let me ask this guy some questions. And that's really, that where the timeline, where a lot of questions are, Lawrence.
So the other thing, do you think this homeless guy is eligible for the 50,000?
Yeah, of course.
According to the Attorney General, he thinks that he should get every dollar of it.
Yeah.
I don't see why. I think it would be very hard pressed, because without John, I don't think we're here today. I mean, he's the one that described the vehicle. Without the vehicle, they don't know who this is.
Right.
They don't find the connection to MIT, at least not yesterday.
Well, and we know they wanted.
We need to get our money up.
So then when I was getting my money out through my Wealthfront account, I told her she also has to. Just having your cash.
Well, and we know he went to school with this guy in Portugal.
So let's think about this. A homeless guy living in the basement of the engineering building is the one that actually approaches the perpetrator because he looks fishy. You didn't have any brown students in the engineering building willing to coordinate with other students, especially males, to go in teams to corner him in the building and also have a team outside to make sure no one leaves so he doesn't escape. Now you're talking about engineers. Now, not everybody in that building, because of studying for finals, were engineers, but you had many that were. Engineers are the most high IQ of all disciplines in university. The average IQ of an engineer is far higher than someone in humanities, someone in chemistry, someone in biology, someone in pre-med or pre-law or whatever. And the high IQ brown students in engineering couldn't coordinate and figure this out. They couldn't put on their MacGyver hat and figure it out. So a big part of the problem was that they were afraid. And the reason why they were afraid was because they probably didn't go into Boy Scouts. They probably weren't in ROTC. They probably were coddled most of their life. It's a big problem. This is a big problem. I remember being in Boy Scouts when I was younger. I was in Cub Scouts too. But you learn stuff. You learn on how to camp. You learn how to hunt. You learn how to coordinate and do team effort. You build up those pillars of God, country, and family. You learn how to work in teams. Why can't they do that? Why? Oh, I'll tell you why. Because to get into these schools now, the students have to put so much effort in their SAT, ACT, and extracurriculars like piano, and get very high GPAs. Well, that's an egghead. That's an egghead. Now, let's think about this. To get into Harvard in the 1980s or 90s was a lot easier to get into Harvard now in terms of the Harvard College. The acceptance rate is much lower because there's so many more people applying. Part of it's because it's online application. Another part of it is that a lot of people want to get into Harvard. But the thing is it was easier to get into Harvard in the 1980s and 90s. Now, what's my point here? Because it was easier, the students that were going into Harvard, male and female, were more well-rounded. They weren't such an egghead. They had more fortitude. They had more cultural experience. These kids today, they're actually immature, even after they get out of college. Now, there's a new research study that says, well, your brain doesn't fully wire until you turn 30, 29, 30, 31, and then adolescence ends. What is the scientific discovery of that your wiring doesn't stop until about age 30, and that adolescence is extended? What are they saying that is a reason for the immaturity? I've seen people more mature at age 16, 17, 18 years old than I've seen with someone that was 30. So it's not about the way the brain's wired. It's about discipline. It's about having ethics. If you don't have the ethics and you don't have the discipline, you're going to produce a kid that's immature. Now, what we have here at Brown are smart kids that don't have fortitude, don't know how to think out of the box, don't know how to actually rise up to the occasion and actually do something way more important than themselves, something bigger than themselves. It's a big problem. It's a big problem. And to fix this issue at these universities, Ivy League Plus, even state universities, to fix this issue, we need to put more discipline and more focus on athletics. And when you do that, you're going to gain teamship. You're going to learn how to work in teams, work together, and you're going to have a better constitution of musculature that if you need to engage in a situation like this, you have the wherewithal. So a big part of the problem at Brown was that you had students that didn't work together to corner the perpetrator in the building, and students working together to making sure that that building was locked down and no one escaped. And this would have never happened. The MIT professor would still be alive. Because of the self-centeredness of students running out of the building, running across the street, calling their mother, and then hiding in a bathroom with their friend, led to the death of an MIT professor. Those students at Brown University were weak. And they were a coward.
We know that he was probably spent a lot of time in that building in 2000 to 2001, that 1 year he spent at Brown. So those are indeed the connections. We'll probably find out his life fell apart in Miami.
All right, Brian, thanks so much for joining the program. So the other thing they have to grapple with is that his visa overstay. I mean, we got to monitor this. We can't just have it. Most of the people that are in the country illegally right now are because of visa overstay. So if someone would have been proactive, followed up on this visa overstay, then this could prevent it. Of course, you got the cameras also as a part of that. Of course, you got eyewitness accounts.
I didn't know about the overstay of the visa. I thought it was that he ended up with a lottery for a green card, but I maybe I'm wrong.
They should have reacted more swiftly on that, but that's just a massive failure.
And yesterday, Lawrence, what you're referring to is that we learned that this suspect entered the U.S. through what's called the Diversity Lottery Immigrant Visa Program in 2017, and was granted a green card as a result. And yesterday, Kristi Noem says that program has officially been suspended. She posted this on X in part. In 2017, President Trump fought to end this program following the devastating New York City truck ramming by an ISIS terrorist who entered under the DV1 program and murdered 8 people.
I want to switch over to the data that's just being released by Bloomberg here. This breaking news.
Worse off than we were about a year ago. There's also a current conditions component and a gauge of expectations. And there's a bit of a contrast here because the current conditions gauge fell to a record low of 50.4, while expectations climbed to a 4-month high. Is that pointing in different directions, Joanne?
Yes and no. So the reason why current conditions fell this month is because consumers continue to tell us that buying conditions for big ticket items are really poor. And so specifically buying conditions for large household purchases that went down quite a bit between last month and this month, and that's partially why we see that with current conditions. And consumers are really pointing to two different things for that. They are frustrated by the persistence of high prices. They think it's a terrible time to buy these big ticket items. And they're also pointing to tariffs. They're not nearly as concerned about tariffs as they were just a few months ago, but they still see that as something that's weighing on the present. As for the future, we saw a few upticks between last month and this month. We have slightly fewer people expecting unemployment rates to rise in the year ahead, but it's still at 63%, still a solid majority who are expecting labor markets to weaken, and that's something that's weighing on consumers.
Joanne, we got a much lower than expected CPI print yesterday, and granted the quality of that data may not be very good, but I'm looking at your University of Michigan 1-year inflation outlook 4.2%, 5 to 10-year inflation outlook 3.2%. Both of those are handily above where the Fed would like to see things.
There's no way.
What do you make of that?
No way. No way.
Consumers' views of inflation have been trending down over the last few months. So that part is certainly good news for policymakers. The huge spike that we saw in inflation expectations in May and June, that has come down. And I think it's 4 straight months of declines for short-run inflation expectations. However, like you said, we're still well above where we were in 2024 as well, not even to mention where we were prior to the pandemic. So consumers overall, they don't feel like we're as worse as, they don't think that things are as bad as they were back in May and June, but they don't think we're out of the woods yet. They are still expecting inflation to remain high for the foreseeable future.
Joanne, do you see any lingering effects from the government shutdown in these numbers at all?
We're not really seeing anything direct. And even during the shutdown was only mentioned spontaneously by about 10% of consumers, in contrast to the majority of consumers that mentioned tariffs unprompted. So, we're not really seeing direct evidence of lingering effects of the government shutdown, but certainly with the shrinkage of the federal government and of the federal workforce, that's certainly going to be weighing on unemployment as we have seen so far, and consumers are expecting unemployment to worsen.
Joanne, we're the one big beautiful bill. A lot of folks are saying we're going to see some real benefits from that in 2026, maybe tax refunds, maybe just more pro-business type of policies here.
Spending will
Does that
go up.
factor into kind of your survey at all?
No.
We're not seeing much evidence that it is high on consumers' minds. Typically speaking, I would say that consumers will react to that when the provisions actually roll out, when they actually see their tax refunds, when money actually hits their pockets. We're not seeing much in terms of.
Well, let's get this straight. So she's a forward leading indicator with the psychographics of the economy. All right, leading indicator. But then she says, well, wait a minute here. We're going to have to wait until we get the cash in our hand, and then we're going to see the projected emotion of that. Well, are you a leading indicator or not? I mean, are you a coincident indicator?
What is
or are
new
you?
for 2025 is that consumers perceive a weakening in labor markets. That is in stark contrast to what we saw in 2022.
Something about her
the last
personality.
time sentiment was around these levels.
There's something about her personality that just rubs me the wrong way. There's a little bit of a liberal, like terse aspect to her, like a know-it-all.
Weighing on consumers now with their
Liberal
focus
know-it-all.
on pocketbook issues.
Joanne, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Joanne Shu, she's the Surveys of Consumers Director at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor here. So,
You know what didn't factor into anyone's thinking in 2020?
And she's saying that she's a leading indicator, but she's not using any of the data that suggests that people are going to have more cash in their pocket by the turn of the new year. Whatever. Okay, let's go back to Brown.
In Trump's direction, I am immediately directing USCIS to pause the DV1 program to ensure no more Americans are harmed by this disastrous program. And this is a program, it's a lottery where about 50,000 immigrants from various countries around the world are selected via computer system to come into this country. I actually know somebody from Nepal who came in this way, and he said that he was shocked when this happened to him, and he didn't even know exactly how his name was entered into this computer system. It changed his life as a result, and he's doing great work here now. But the president has always said merit-based is better. This is a diversity system, so he wanted to change it in 2017, and now it's suspended today.
Yeah, in September 14th, they said he went from a diversity immigrant visa, and then they said he was lawfully admitted as a legal permanent resident at JFK Airport back in 2017. He ends up in Miami, sadly, this professor, same age, same time, former classmates, that family probably knows about him, but they had the professor that was killed, who evidently is a genius, was killed with his family, with his kids upstairs. So he gets assassinated. And Lawrence, to your point, I know investigations aren't easy, but did they put their foot off the gas?
They did. Yeah, I mean, it's not even debatable.
Right, so they put their foot off the gas, and then they told everyone, don't worry about it, you're not in danger. Clearly, these people were in danger. Right. You had a crazed gunman out there, and then the next thing you know, the professor's dead on Monday. If they're able to pivot a different direction, a more accurate direction, if they're able to get to the building quicker before the shooting stopped, or close to when the shooting stopped, and not 10, 20 minutes, maybe that professor's alive today.
They stopped the manhunt. That's the bottom line, and they're going to have to deal with that in the coming days.
Want even more Fox News on YouTube? Become a Fox News Patriot today. Click join to find out how.
All right, let's listen into some more about this.
Open a whole new world of fascinating places and people for just $29.
A Fox News alert now. If you are just waking up this morning, the man believed to have murdered students at Brown University and a professor at MIT has been found dead inside a storage facility in New Hampshire. But there are still plenty of unanswered questions.
We're still investigating the motive in this case and trying to, because like I said, he was very careful in his communications, and we just don't have any information right now to answer that question. But when we get that information, we will share it.
Retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Scott Duffy joins me now. Scott, right now, how are investigators piecing together a motive? Specifically, why this suspect killed two teenage students that weren't even born when this guy reportedly attended Brown University, the same university where the shooting took place, where those two individuals died?
Yeah, good morning, Todd. Yeah, same questions as myself and the rest of us watching, but most importantly, investigators are already digging deep. So you have an individual that, from all reports, right, has been at the university 20 to 25 years ago, and then all of a sudden surfaces without us knowing what has brought him back to the university. The connection to the MIT professor, other than both being Portuguese, what is their connections in the past, perhaps being classmates, etc. But what took place in these last 20 some odd years that has brought this person back to Brown University and ultimately on the footsteps of this MIT professor's residence, and to have done unspeakable harm. So investigators are definitely digging deep to see what was that trigger, what took place that caused him to come here and do unspeakable acts.
You saw on the full screen that we just showed, he lived in Miami, Florida prior to all this. He also planned this pretty extensively, from the storage unit up in New Hampshire to that rental car with Florida plates that he covered up then with Maine plates. That level of preparation, albeit not perfect because obviously they found him, but that level of preparation, what does it tell you about his state of mind?
Yeah. Regardless of what was going through his mind, perhaps some sort of mental health component, but he knew exactly what he was doing. The fact that we are seeing pieces of evidence that are going back months in planning, all this takes a lot to be able to have these communications where he is perhaps changing SIM cards, using different apps to throw off authorities. So he was already thinking ahead of, I'm going to try to stay one step ahead of authorities and do what I do. I'm not quite sure if he was done. It just seemed like this was over a period of 6 days, finding him, with Saturday going to Brown University, and then just a few days later to the MIT professor, and then being able to continue to escape authorities and wind up where he was found in a storage unit in New Hampshire.
Interesting point there. You don't think he was done, but yet he killed himself apparently when authorities started moving in. Just quickly, how do you square that circle, Scott?
Yeah, so it's a tremendous amount of planning. And so the Brown University, even though he had gone there, what was his target? Who was his target, as opposed to just going to that very campus, that very building that he was at? And then what happened with him and this MIT professor, whether it be years ago or did something recently take place that caused him to want to commit these acts? So I believe something was going through his mind, perhaps over the years, but typically you can only go back 3 to 6 months, and you should be able to find what was that trigger that started him on this path. It just seemed that this was an anomaly, an exception to your typical active shooter going into a location to do the most harm in the shortest period of time. And then ultimately, they are typically met either with law enforcement being able to stop that threat, or somebody taking their own life. Yes, he took his own life, but it was some point afterwards.
Sure. The manhunt is over. The quest for answers just beginning. Scott Duffy, thank you, sir.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News.
Live Now is talking about this subject matter, so let's listen in on this live stream from Live Now.
The Onion, and learn a lot from this individual.
And as the investigation here continues, one thing that I did want to point out, on the day of, there was that shelter in place that was issued for Brown University. But speaking on kind of a federal level there, when you're talking about Homeland Security, a situation like this, what is the point where investigators or federal law enforcement will say we need to actually raise the threat level overall for the entire country?
What?
The threat level across overall the country comes on, usually holidays, Hanukkah, Christmas, 4th of July, as we did in the past. I mean, 20 years ago, we had the red, orange, the duct tape, as I recall. Now it's more centralized. I can't recall the last time that we've raised the threat level nationally, usually around airports, be vigilant, whatever is happening around the country. As we saw on Bondi Beach on Monday and Hanukkah, and I'm sure that all of the Jewish facilities, stepped up their security anyway. Whatever's happening around the world does have an effect on what happens here in the United States. But the days of raising the threat level for the whole national level, like we did after 9/11, we haven't seen that often. But we do still need to, make individuals vigilant, but feel safe when they're in the travels and going about day-to-day life activities.
Last question for you here. What impact does misinformation, disinformation have on the threat response, the public trust during situations like this one?
Yeah, it was big, and we did see AI photos out there, someone trying to stir the pot, potentially link this to someone else, not saying a swatting incident, but try to implement someone else. And we had a suspect early on Saturday night. How did we get there with that suspect? Did someone have a grievance against that individual, Mr. Erickson, I recall? Folks kind of jumped the gun there and say, we had a suspect, we're good to go. But second time, you really couldn't screw that up, and we didn't. So
Ed Cash, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. Anything we missed? Anything you want to make sure to add here before I let you go?
No, the team up here in New England works very well as a regional team. All of these locations are close. They'll learn from this. They'll get better, and they'll respond quicker and more accurate the next time. I think this was a successful capture, but all of these events, you learn more and more, and you get better because the bad guys are trying to get better as well. It's offense versus defense, and I think our law enforcement will learn from this and do better.
All right, Ed Cash there, Homeland Security.
Well, the same thing happens with the perpetrators. They listen to how they figure out how they do the investigation, and the perpetrators learn from previous perpetrators, and they figure a way around it. So it's a never-ending do loop between law enforcement and the perpetrators. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver soaps. These soaps are very high quality. They will neutralize, help the health of your skin. Use them every day. I use these every day, very high quality. All right. So if you want better skin, get these soaps. Now you can get it in peppermint, in lavender, also in lemongrass and charcoal tea tree. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5. Get $5 off any order. It's discount, all caps, the number 5. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift. And get a few bars for your household. These are very high quality soaps that will help with your skin, the health of your skin. Super important. All right. And also go to my store and get the magnesium and zinc and the vitamin C and magnesium. Vitamin C and magnesium will help with your skin, help boost up your immune system, and help with your brain function. Magnesium is super important for brain function and to increase the efficacy of vitamin D3. Vitamin and zinc boosts up the immune system and helps with brain function. Take them together. They're a powerful stack. It's synergistic. Now, you do this every day, guess what? Your immune system is going to be better and your brain's going to be better. But especially take this during the winter season. You want to boost up that immune system, and if you're not feeling well, take a double dose. Take 1 dose in the morning, take another dose in the evening. All right, with that, let's listen in to another strike by the Department of War.
Have conducted more boat strikes. Let's put this video up on your screen here. The U.S. military said yesterday that it had conducted 2 more strikes against boats it said were smuggling drugs in the Eastern Pacific Ocean, killing 5 people. That's just some of the video on your screen there, but I wanted to pull this up here quickly. This is a post from U.S. Southern Command on social media. It says, on December 18th, at the direction of SecWar Pete Hegseth, Joint Task Force Southern Spear conducted lethal kinetic strikes on 2 vessels operated by designated terrorist organizations in international waters. Intelligence confirmed that the vessels were transiting along known narco trafficking routes in the Eastern Pacific and were engaged in narco trafficking operations. A total of 5 male narco terrorists were killed during these actions, 3 in the first vessel and 2 in the second vessel. No U.S. military forces were harmed. Hashtag Op Southern Spear. So once again, that was posted to social media last night as we are learning a bit more about this. The military saying 3 people in 1 vessel and 2 in the other were killed. The attacks brought the total number of known boat strikes to 28, while at least 104 people have been killed. That's according to numbers announced by the Trump administration. President Trump has justified the attacks as a necessary escalation to stem the flow of drugs into the United States and asserted the U.S. is engaged in, quote, an armed conflict with drug cartels. This all coming after the Senate gave final passage on Wednesday to an annual military policy bill that will authorize $901 billion in defense programs, while pressuring Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to provide lawmakers with video of strikes on alleged drug boats in international water near Venezuela. The annual National Defense Authorization Act, which raises troop pay by 3.8%, gained bipartisan backing as it moved through Congress. It passed the Senate on a 77-20 vote before lawmakers plan to leave from Washington for a holiday break. 2 Republicans, Senators Rand Paul and Mike Lee, and 18 Democrats voted against that bill. The White House has indicated that it is in line with President Trump's national security priorities. However, the legislation, which ran over 3,000 pages, revealed some points of friction between Congress and the Pentagon as the Trump administration shifts its focus away from security in Europe and towards Central and South America. The bill pushes back on recent moves by the Pentagon. It demands more information on these boat strikes in the Caribbean, requires that the U.S. keep its troop levels in Europe at current levels, and send some military aid to Ukraine. But overall, the bill represents a compromise between the parties. It implements many of President Trump's executive orders and proposals on eliminating diversity and inclusion efforts in the military and grants emergency military powers at the U.S. border with Mexico. Still, the bill did face objections, both from Democratic and Republican leadership on the Senate Commerce Committee and the head of the National Transportation Safety Board. And that's because the legislation could allow military aircraft to obtain a waiver to operate without broadcasting their precise location, as an Army helicopter had done before a mid-air collision with an airliner over Washington, D.C. back in January. To address those concerns, the Senate advanced a bill to require all military and civilian aircraft to broadcast their locations. That bill will now go to the House, and Senator Ted Cruz says he's optimistic it could reach the president's desk as soon as next month. So a lot of backstory there for you, but we do bring you this breaking news as we do know now. The U.S. military is saying just last night it had conducted 2 more strikes against boats it said were smuggling drugs in the Eastern Pacific Ocean, once again killing 5 people.
Words and music. Which comes first?
These songs, when I write them, is an invitation into investigating who's in here. I was like, oh yeah, I'll write a party song. I'll write about what it's like to be an introvert losing your mind.
All right, let's listen into significant labor problem.
Lives and breathes. He's BlackRock's global allocation team head. He also has a side job as the global fixed income chief, too. You're busy now, I got to tell you.
Every day.
What was your first reaction when you saw the CPI number?
It's pretty good. I mean, listen, have we solved inflation? No, we haven't solved inflation. We're closer to target. It's also, that number was a little funky today because we didn't get October. So it was a little messy. You got to cut through that and say, okay, what does it mean we don't have October? So you're coming off a number that's not clear. But the truth is, it's good. Inflation is, you are seeing some moderation. If you take the last 3 months, 6-month moving average, core PCE, core CPI, we're in the high 2s.
So let's get some breaking economics.
Listen, I actually don't think inflation is going to be the problem in the future. I think, as you were describing earlier, I think we have a labor problem in the country, and a significant labor problem.
Okay, so you think the significant labor problem right now, we've got inflation at 4.4%. How significant is that? I mean, historically, it's stayed rather low.
Yeah, unemployment rate.
Correct.
Yeah. So when you actually break down, so 4.4 is not a disastrous number, but it is trending up. It was 4.1 a couple of months ago. It is trending up. If you get underneath the surface and you look at what I think is a real problem, if you take youth unemployment, people 20 to 24 years old, it's 8.3%. Millennials are having a super hard time today. If you take lower skilled jobs, you take the U6s,
using lower numbers. It's 11%.
We have an incredible bifurcation economy today. Young people having a really hard time. We saw in the Michigan survey, it's the hardest time getting a job. It's since they've been doing the survey. It's very, very challenged. When we have low income, young people, small business are really struggling. And I think that is the problem. And I think that unemployment rate is going to keep trending up, but particularly making it difficult for that cohort.
So when you look at some of this data, it could very well be distorted due to the government shutdown. But does anything about it say to you that it's legitimate to spur portfolio changes?
So listen, does it spur dramatic portfolio changes? I think the one thing that we do, and I think is important, I think interest rates will come down over the next year. I think and I think what's really important for the Fed is, can you get the 10-year note down to 3.5 to 4, keep it constant. If you keep that to 3 and get that to 3.5 to 4, gets the mortgage rate down. So what do you do with that within portfolios? I like agency mortgages quite a bit. I like taking, we've talked about on this show, I like owning interest rates in the sort of the middle part of the yield curve, the 5-year part. they had a great year. I mean, think about this year. I mean, fixed income and a bunch of our portfolios are going to throw off 8.5% return. Pretty good for fixed income.
Fixed income looks good. The short end of the yield curve, the T-bills, those a year ago, we sat here and looked at them at 4-5%.
Yeah.
Is that ship sailed?
I think it's on its way. I think that those cash levels are going to come down. Because I think there's one thing today that was fascinating. There is so we got through the employment report, we got through the CPI report, and what then it shows you is there's so much, why are tech stocks rallying? People don't want to take risk until they see these big data points come. I actually think even if the number wasn't as favorable, markets would rally. There is a ton of money sitting in cash. There's $8 trillion sitting in money market funds. What happens is as long as you get benign economic data, and as long as you have a Fed that is receptive to moving that rate down, equity markets will continue to do well.
They go directly into the very area that's already had a huge run up. You're talking about risky assets like maybe the AI names or AI adjacent. And I mean, right around now, the fear is starting to creep in there. So let me just get you on rates.
Yeah.
The market is only pricing in 2 rate cuts in 2026.
Yeah.
Are you with that?
I'm with it and by the way, I would do it sooner. I think you can get those 2 rate cuts done. Yes, I think markets are not pricing January after the Fed just went. I think there's
odds. That's not very much.
No, I like those odds.
Okay.
I actually think you take the labor report, you take what is benign inflation. I think the Fed should get the equilibrium funds rate should be closer to 3. If you take 5-year inflation break-evens, the expectations on inflation, it's 2.28%. If you get the funds rate to 3, you're still well above the expected rate of inflation. So I think you have to get there. I think they'll do 2 cuts. Okay. I think they'll do more than that, and I think you can do more than that.
I know you're not going to answer this, but I'm asking. I'm going for it. President said he really liked Chris Waller, but he also said there are 4 candidates.
Yeah.
We know Kevin Hassett. We know Kevin Warsh. Now Chris Waller. Are you the 4th?
So we go back to the CPI report. The CPI report. No, you're right. I can't really answer, but I think the first time I got to talk about it was when I was on a show with you, and I said, as I'll say again, it was the biggest time in my life to be in this consideration. But I know I've got to focus on that the S&P is going to be finish the day on the upside.
You don't see any recession signals at all, do you?
No, I don't. I think. So I'll break that down a little bit. No, I don't. In the economy, first of all, we have fiscal tailwind. We have tax receipt dynamics that are at play. You've got AI, CapEx spend that's significant. However, you have an economy that's operating well on a couple of cylinders. We're talking about, it's actually an extraordinary thing. Nobody's ever seen this generation. What's driving consumption is people 55 and above, older savers. And it's incredible about how consumption is concentrated there. That group is doing well. We'll continue to keep consumption in a good spot. And then CapEx spend, AI. I think you need to have an economy that becomes broader. Right. We're talking about small business.
Well, as you said, unemployment for the youth is 8+%.
Yes.
That's
11. By the way, it's going to go higher.
It is
because of the dynamic that it is so difficult coming out of school today. You have, what companies are doing is pretty extraordinary. Is they're holding on their existing labor. But what's going to happen over time, you see big companies announcing layoffs. Over time, they're just going to let attrition work its way through. Right. And so I think that youth unemployment number is going higher, which I think is a travesty.
I know we have to wrap, but I have 2 questions. One, how do you fix youth unemployment? You said it's going to go higher.
Yeah, higher. It's really simple. How you got to hire?
One, and I think we started with the president describing this dynamic. Housing is such a big deal for a couple of reasons. If you get housing velocity moving, it increases labor mobility. Nobody can sell our house. You're a young person. Hey, you can't unlock the value of your house. And you talked about
most young people don't have.
You put 3 people to work for every home built in this country. That really helps. That is the place you start. Listen, then I think there are things to do with student loans. I think there's things to do in a bunch of different areas. And listen, over time, I think, to me, the whole key, I said this, I'm involved in a lot of urban education, my school's in Newark. The key is education is the key. And because you don't really know how the transition is going to, but lower skill jobs are going away.
Austin Goolsbee, Chicago Fed president, coming up. What's your question for him?
So, my question is, can you balance inflation versus labor today and get to the place where I think the equilibrium rate is lower than where we sit today? Do you agree with that? Or do you think you just got to be a bit careful and deliberate in getting that rate lowered?
Great to see you.
Thanks for having me on.
Happy holidays. So glad.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it.
We're going to go to the consumer sentiment revised lower to 52.9 in December. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and support the work that I do in trying to inform the public on how to get healthy. If you follow my lead, these are the supplements that I take every day to slow down the aging process. It works. Why? Because it's targeting inflammation, free radicals, energy levels, immune systems. If you hit the targets of aging, right? What causes aging? You can slow it down. This is coming out of research from geriatric medicine. This is coming out of research with sports medicine. If you want to slow down the aging process, pay attention and just follow what I do. It's that simple, all right? And it's not rocket science, all right? It's really simple stuff. So please go to my store and get the heirloom barley. Heirloom barley will bring down inflammation, detoxify your body, and soak up free radicals. And when you do that, you're boosting up your immune system. When you have a better immune system, guess what? You don't get sick. And guess what? It helps to keep away the big C, all right? And by soaking up free radicals, bringing down inflammation and detoxing your body, your tissues will perform better. By bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. By bringing down inflammation at your joint level, guess what? You won't have those aches and pains as you're getting older. You'll recover quicker after a workout. Your brain will function better because you're bringing down cerebral inflammation. You're bringing down cerebral creation of the free radicals. You're detoxifying your body. This is very powerful. This is a month supply. Go to my store and get the heirloom barley. Take it every day. Slow down the aging process. If you take this and you are working out, you'll recover quicker. So you get a lot of benefits from taking this. So go to my store, use discount 5 to save some money, and guess what? You stack it with lots of other stuff that I talk about. You can target the points that are the milestones and the key vectors of aging. So if you keep the inflammation down, if you keep the free radicals down, if you detoxify your body regularly, then as you're going into those key milestones for methylation of your genes, you're aging slower. But if those free radicals are at high concentrations, if you have lots of chronic inflammation, and you get to those milestones in life where those genes are methylated, guess what? Now you have a gene expression profile, an epigenetic profile that's older. If you slow the epigenetic profile down, you age slower. It's that simple. Now, there's nobody that has a more comprehensive and effective way to slow down the aging process than, voila, DrPaulCottrell. Nobody. Not Johnson, not Brian Johnson, you know, the tech bro that spends $2 million to try to slow down aging. You don't have to spend $2 million a year to slow down aging. I just told you how. Go to my store and get the heirloom barley. It's about proper diet, proper exercise, proper supplementation, proper sleep, do some resistance training, do some cardio, stretching and balancing will help the cerebellum. Make sure you do more resistance training than cardio. Learn new things, read, like read a book, talk to people, do some writing, be active. And when you do that, guess what? You're aging slower and you have a better quality of life. Nobody out there is more accurate than I am on this. I have the most comprehensive profile. I have the most comprehensive anti-aging protocol than anybody. And it's really simple. Multivitamin that's easy to digest, that covers the bases, a good probiotic as a foundation. The first pillar is the Max 35er cleanse to boost up your innate immune system. C60 to soak up free radicals. The third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals to help your immune system and your cardiovascular system. And guess what? It also helps with your brain. And boomer boost up, rev up those energy levels in your metabolism. And then you add some stuff to that, like the barley, or the vitamin B complex, or the myotrol. And guess what? You are radically slowing down the aging process. I'm in my 50s, and I'm willing to bet that all of the, quote, gurus out there have a worse off epigenetic profile than I do.
Data, this is Just Crossing. Rick Santelli has it for us. Rick?
Yes, David, indeed. These are the December final reads on University of Michigan sentiment and the inflation metrics embedded in this report. So the mid-month read gets tossed. 53.3 was the mid-month read on the headline. It now moves lower to 52.9. That'll be the weakest since it was 51 in November. And I'd like to point out that if you look at the absolute low, it is 50 from June of 22. We're not far away from the low going back to my database in the 70s. Now, if we look at current conditions, same dynamic. 50.7 mid-month becomes 50.4, and 50.4 is a new all-time low, replacing the 50.7. Also, my database goes back into the 1970s. Look at expectations. Same dynamic. Mid-month 55 now becomes 54.6, and 54.6 would be the weakest since November when it was 51. And finally, on the inflation front, well, 4.2, it replaces 4.1. It's 1/10 hotter on the 1-year inflation. On the 5 to 10-year inflation rate, it remains the same at 3.2%. And I must point out that the equity markets are making new highs on the Dow Jones Industrial Average for the session on this data. And it's weaker than expected and pretty much a punt on the inflation data. So no surprises, but I will also point out University of Michigan has not kept up with what it normally does, and that is correlate with the equity moves.
It's hard to put into words the horrors that we've witnessed every day during our time here.
We're going to go
Entire
to MS
families
now.
come into the
We're going to go to MS now, and they're talking about Trump's hits with the drug boats and, you know, the Venezuela war that's coming. I think we should have a Venezuelan war. And, oh, by the way, I think you'll make money on it if you follow my lead. I think there's going to be a $4 to $5 blip up in crude oil. I think the part of the reason why there's so much oil on the market is to be the shock absorber when we do hit Venezuela. Now, what's going to happen is that we hit, I think oil will go up $4 to $5 and then come back down. So what you're going to do is you make your money on the way up, and then you short it and you make your money on the way down. Now, the question is will natural gas do the same thing? So you got to be really careful with natural gas. There may be too much on the market. Right now, natural gas is trading at 3.94. And if we hit Venezuela at this moment in time, which we're not, but let's say if we did, it might go up to like 4.2, 4.3. You got to be really careful with natural gas. It's pretty volatile. It'll go up. Like yesterday, it was trading at 4.2, and then it came back down. So you got to worry about that. Right now, we're at 56. So I think that there's an agreement with Trump and with MDS over in Saudi Arabia, flood the market with some oil, wait for the hit in Venezuela, and then there's going to be a price spike. And that's what I'm waiting for. Now, a lot of energy traders are saying the same thing, and if you've been paying attention, right before Trump was making that speech, you know, about how the economy was, a lot of people thought that he was going to say he was going to be hitting Venezuela, and the energy market was starting to tick up just before his announcement. And then it started petering off and started selling because he didn't say anything about Venezuela hit. So I'm surprised he hasn't hit it yet. Now, George Washington crossed the Delaware River to kill our enemy, the Germans that were helping the British during the Revolution. All right, so he crosses on Christmas Eve to kill Germans and then crosses back. So I wouldn't be surprised. And I think it would be actually a great thing in American history to actually have that echo in the military campaign with Venezuela, to actually strike Venezuela either on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. Now, it would be awesome if he did. Now, the sad thing is that the markets would be closed and you wouldn't see oil go up. So that may be part of the reason why he would do it, is to try to dampen that spike in oil. We'll see. But I think that there is some probability of him doing it on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day.
It carried out 2 more attacks yesterday on suspected drug smuggling boats in the Eastern Pacific, killing a total of 5 people there. U.S. Southern Command shared this short video of the strikes on social media without providing any evidence of its claims about the boats or their passengers, as has become their habit. This marks the 3rd day of strikes just this week in a highly scrutinized months-long campaign that has killed at least 104 people across 28 known attacks. Along with the deadly boat strikes, the Trump administration had...
So what if we're killing narco terrorists? So what? But MS now, like they're bystanders, like this was collateral damage. What I mean, is MSN for the narcos? I mean, come on. What's wrong with killing these guys? I think Americans should just, keep on, pushing for this. Why would we want to stop? You can't take MS now. It's a bunch of liberals. And oh, by the way, a lot of them are coming from intelligentsia universities.
Positioned thousands of troops in the region and ordered a blockade of sanctioned oil tankers coming to and leaving from Venezuela. The actions raising questions about the motive and legal basis behind the moves. The New York Times puts it like this, quote, "The core argument for using armed force, overdoses caused by fentanyl coming from Mexico. The target of the strikes, boats suspected of carrying cocaine from South America. A Venezuelan president's alleged involvement in..."
First of all, let's go back to the history. There were American oil companies that drilled the wells. Then you have communism coming in to take away the property rights of those energy companies. And now it's a state-owned asset, propped up by communists. Oh, no one talks about that the Wagner Group is in Venezuela, propping up Maduro. Oh, where's Wagner Group coming from? Russia. So let me get this straight. In our backyard, Russia and China are influencing the politics and the economics in South America. Do you think that is a good idea? No. No. So knocking out Venezuela, you get a lot of things. You knock out the narco terrorists. You get the rare earth metals that you need for your military and your economic engine. And you start controlling your backyard. Let's say you have a 5-acre property, but you only have control of 3 of the acres. And you got a bunch of hoodlums running around on 2 acres. Are you going to let that happen? Well, if you're an American, especially in Texas, the answer would be no.
Drug trafficking, intolerable. A former president of Honduras convicted in a U.S. court for doing the exact same thing, pardoned by Mr. Trump. Republican Congressman Thomas Massey of Kentucky called out those
So the
abuses.
writers of the New York Times must know better. Must know better. Must realize that what's happening in Venezuela is not the first piece being moved in a global war against China. No, they're too intellectual to see that. Why would you want to control the northern part of South America? Oh, I know. To move your navy from the Atlantic to the Pacific and back and forth. Don't fall into the trap of the stupid liberal, aka the New York Times.
He's in question the administration's goals in Venezuela during a floor speech this week on Capitol Hill.
The framers understood a simple truth. To the extent that war-making power devolves to one person, liberty dissolves. If the president believes military action against Venezuela is justified and needed, he should make the case and Congress should vote before American lives and treasure are spent on regime change in South America. Let's be honest about likely outcomes. Do we truly believe that Nicolas Maduro will be replaced by a modern-day George Washington? How did that work out? In Cuba, Libya, Iraq, or Syria? Previous presidents told us to go to war over WMDs, weapons of mass destruction that did not exist. Now it's the same playbook, except we're told that drugs are the WMDs. If it were about drugs, we'd bomb Mexico, or China, or Colombia, and the president would not have pardoned one.
Okay, let's bomb them. Big deal. Let's just bomb everybody. As long as it maintains our economic prowess, as long as it maintains our hegemonic power, of course. Why would we give that up? See, the problem is that we have a society that has become too, I don't want to fight. I don't want, it's bad. But yet every single superpower, no matter what epoch you look at, it's about power projection. The moment you lose power projection, you lose your empire. Oh, we're in different times because of keyboards. Really? No. No. The essence of mankind hasn't changed for thousands of years. So stop pretending that an info war is how things are now. It's kinetic war that makes things happen. Has always been that way. It will always be that way.
Rolando Hernandez. This is about oil and regime change.
That is Republican Congressman Thomas Massey of Kentucky. In a new phone interview with NBC News, President Trump...
And what is wrong with that? Again, Venezuela took the rights of American companies' property through their communistic, socialistic takeover. So they stole the oil. They stole American property. So are we going to really, what's about the property rights here? No, what happened was that Venezuela is communist. It has a socialistic state-owned enterprise. So we're taking it back. But even if you don't want to accept that as the real history, all right? We need the heavy crude because most of our oil is light crude. We need the heavy crude. So what's wrong with us taking it? Because are we supposed to lose the war with China? How's that going to be for your portfolio? How's that going to help
with your retirement? How's that going to help with your overall lifestyle? Our lifestyle in the United States is predicated on our power projection. We lose that, your lifestyle ends. Now, why? It has a lot to do with the dollar and it being a means of transaction around the world. Now, the moment you stop that in the United States, your economic prosperity starts to decline. Those are just the simple facts. So, do I care about some socialist or communist dictatorship in Venezuela being overthrown by Trump? I don't feel bad. Take the fucking oil. What's more important is making sure that we have all the resources we need to make sure that we fight and win against China. That we do not lose our hegemonic power in the Pacific. That is the most important thing. Because the moment you lose freedom of navigation in the 9-dash line, your lifestyle is going to change radically.
To open the possibility of war with Venezuela, saying, quote, "I don't rule it out, no." He also declined to say whether ousting President Maduro is his goal. Trump said, quote, "He knows exactly what I want. He knows better than anybody." Unclear what exactly that means, Joe.
Well, I mean, he knows better than anybody but Donald Trump and Susie Wiles and David Ignatius. Susie Wiles made it very clear. And of course, I do love how people, David, in around the White House who are trying to spin this interview, this Chris Ripple interview, are acting as if she's a babe in the woods. Oh, she was manipulated. She didn't know what she was doing. He took her out of context. I mean, the things that she said explicitly, she knew what she was saying.
Joe, just remember, you were banging Manika, before, you should have. And oh, by the way, what happened to that intern when you were in Congress? People would like to know. Oh, part of the intelligentsia that's going to tell you that knocking out Venezuela is a bad thing. Huh? Wait a minute here. What's wrong with our 5 acres in controlling it?
She also knew, many things that she said would probably end up being quoted in courtrooms in future cases, whether you're talking about political prosecutions, whether you're talking about a challenge to this war. But in this specific case, the president's chief of staff said it's about regime change. Said people a lot smarter than me in this administration believe that this will lead to regime change. That said, we first started with a nonsensical argument that it was about drugs. That's just preposterous.
What's wrong with regime change? It's time to get the Chinese and the Russians out of our backyard. Like Red Dawn. You remember that movie? Like the 1980 version? It's time to kick ass. Now, you know what we've been losing in America? Because we've been coddled, because we go to AMC theaters, IMAXs, and we love our entertainment. We love our bread and circus, but we've forgotten how to fight. Coddled Ivy Leaguers at Brown University, they can't fight against some fat ass that's in his 40s because they were coddled, because they're afraid. Now, let's teleport back to a time where there were actually men that actually fought, like in Rome. All right? Can you imagine something like that in Brown University happening during the Roman Empire? Oh, wait a minute. Caesar went to Gaul and just started killing. Just started absolutely killing, chopping off heads and putting them on stakes. To tell people the frontier that the Romans are here and not to fuck with us. That's the kind of ethos we need. We need to have a killer instinct. And this is the reason why Hegseth is saying it's a Department of War now, not a Department of Defense. Because the Department of Defense inherently in the terminology is you're less aggressive. There's nothing wrong with being aggressive, as long as that you also couple it with logic. And if you really pay attention to the real leaders of Rome, the generals, they coupled their prowess strategically and their courage on the battlefield with learning. So they coupled body and mind, which is an ethic of Greeks, body and mind. If you're just an egghead, you're doing it wrong. If you're just a jock, you're doing it wrong. But if you're both, boom, that's the secret sauce. So if you're a smart guy and you're a fat ass, too bad. Did it wrong. If you're a weakling and you're an egghead, you did it wrong. You couple both of them together. And unfortunately, we have a lot of people in the United States that has not learned that lesson. And it's weakened our empire. People like this right here, right here.
All the reasons mentioned above. And Donald Trump now talking about oil, which actually does make more sense, because remember when he was told that in 2016, when he said we should have gone into Iraq and seized their oil, he was reminded that that was a war crime.
Why don't they bring up that China is partnering up with Brazil? And remember, Brazil and China are part of the BRICS. Brazil is partnering up with China with satellites and telescopes for their space missions, which have dual purpose. Because when there's a war with the United States and China, it's going to start in space because of the satellites and all the telemetry that they need to run the smart bombs and missiles. So don't you think that our backyard, we need to control it? Hello, hello. Once again, the intelligentsia makes you weak because they're a bunch of eggheads that don't know anything about war. They don't know anything about power projection.
Didn't care, wants to go after oil here. And then finally, here we are again on regime change. I guess Congress is going to sit back and let him just go ahead and do whatever he wants for whatever reason he wants without, again, questioning the purpose of this. I've got 4 reasons why they shouldn't do that. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and Libya. Regime change, especially in this century, never ends well.
So, Joe, this Congress, as you say, seems determined to give up its Article 1 power.
Venezuela is the first piece of the chessboard with a war with China. That's what this is about. You need to secure the materials, these rare materials that you can't get from China when the war starts. And you're also eliminating China's power projection and Russia's power projection in our backyard. Now, why, with Morning Joe's legal degree, he can't see this? I mean, doesn't anybody have any balls? Where's the testosterone? Where's that fighter mentality. I mean, what is it? I mean, we are not going to be an empire if we don't think like what I'm saying. If we're going to end up being France, we're going to end up being like France if we follow Morning Joe.
To declare war, nobody really has the guts to stand up and insist on clarity about what this mission is. My own perspective.
We don't have any guts to tell Hegseth and Trump, stop doing this. Stop knocking out the narco-terrorists. Stop trying to get the Wagner Group out of Venezuela. Stop pushing China out of South America. We don't have anybody that has the guts. No, it takes guts to actually say enough is enough with China and Russia's influence in South America. America first, we're going to kick ass. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with taking the oil from Venezuela if we need it? So what? So what? If they play ball, they can make a lot of money. Hello? It's about the money. It's about power projection. You think our empire grew because of the ideals of, some sort of philosophical thought? Don't trust that boss wash corridor intelligentsia, because they are the ones that have ruined the show. Oh, all these regime changes they're talking about, they came from think tankers in the boss wash corridor. They're part of this. They're part of what they're complaining about.
This is in a way a branding exercise. Donald Trump wants to brand Latin America as his own.
What's wrong with that?
It's going to be Trump Latin America, and Venezuela is the first test case. He wants hegemony. He wants to have U.S. rule in our hemisphere unquestioned. It's the biggest difference.
And if you have more control of South America, if you have a better alliance with Greenland and Canada, you have a better missile defense system. Hello? Hypersonics that can float around for a long time. And you're going to have a much better, more comprehensive grid, shield, Golden Dome, whatever you want to call it. Star Trek. Think you're just going to be able to do it in continental United States? It won't work. You need Canada. You need Greenland. You need Alaska. You need South America. Now, if it prevents Putin and China from hitting us, and we take South America in the process, so what? So what? That's preservation of us. If we let these eggheads rule the show, then our missile defense system is weaker. Oh. Joe's so smart that he doesn't bring that up. Yet his wife, Mika, is the daughter of Brzezinski. And he loved the Trilateral Commission.
In his foreign policy is this focus on Latin America. I think that he is gradually tightening the squeeze on Maduro in Venezuela, finding new reasons each week. For now several months, it's been these drug smuggling boats, but as we've noted, they're not smuggling the drugs that are really doing damage to the United States.
Can you imagine, let's say, a time machine, all right? And you take Julius Caesar or Constantine, right? and you teleport them into our time period, and you sat him down right in front of this guy in Morning Joe, what do you think Julius Caesar would do? Or Alexander the Great? What do you think where are the men? Where are they to actually say, hello, egghead, you're wrong? He can't even dress properly. He needs to pull up his tie and tuck in his collar. But he's going to tell you that knocking out narco-terrorists is a bad thing. What?
That had been sanctioned under previous reasons, but were available targets. And now the president, as we sometimes say, is jawboning. He's threatening Maduro with further additional strikes and this not so veiled suggestion that what he really wants is for him out of Venezuela. He knows what I want. He knows what he has to do. The president just said. With a group of friends last weekend who follow foreign policy.
And is Maduro even legitimately elected? Oh, wait a minute. There was a jump diffusion with those voting machines. Very similar to 2020. You know, votes, and then all of a sudden, blip, votes. Statistically, like, impossible. Same thing happened during his election. And oh, by the way, to maintain the peace, the Wagner Group from Russia came in to support his regime. Wake up, America. Wake up, Morning Joe. Drink the coffee. Start supporting the empire.
We're taking bets as to what country is going to grant exile to President Maduro once Trump's squeeze finally succeeds. I don't know, Joe, if you want to put in your bet, but you know, I think at bottom, this is an effort to reorient U.S. foreign policy and the use of our military towards this hemisphere. Venezuela is the first test case. Some of the arguments don't quite fit, but the broader argument, this is our area of our sphere of control.
And what does Morning Joe say about decoupling or putting less emphasis in Europe? Oh, you can't do that. You got to get the Russians out. You got to get the Russians out of Ukraine. Yet the Russians are in Venezuela. And the Chinese are in Brazil. And they're saying that Trump isn't being rational? I just can't take it. I just can't take it. There's something wrong with Morning Joe's brain.
David, as we wrote in our newsletter the other day about anti-Semitism, quote Ecclesiastes 1:9, there is nothing new under the sun. And as a public service to people in the White House who don't know history, that don't read history, that I'm not being snide, it is the case. They don't know the history of what has happened in the past. We can march them back, David. I mean, 1961, the Bay of Pigs went terribly. If you look what happened in the coup that the United States and the CIA pushed on Guatemala in 1953, that ended in chaos and dictatorship. It ended very badly for us. If you look at what happened in Brazil, there was an idea that we were going to oust a leftist government in Brazil in 1964. What happened? They had a dictator. They had an autocrat. They had...
Yeah, and what was also happening in 1964, Morning Joe? We had a lot of focus in Vietnam. And unfortunately, our government can't chew gum and walk at the same time.
Severe human rights violations for the next 20 years. You can look at other countries in South and Central America. It never ends well.
He's
What
more
did we
worried
do in
about the
73?
civil rights. He's more worried about, you know, the well-being of these foreign nationals in terms of our geopolitical maneuvering. What about how he treats his staffers when he was a congressman? I mean, we still don't know really what happened, right, Morning Joe?
Allende, when we pushed him out of power with a coup, we brought in Pinochet, who had the most, probably had the most repressive.
The whole Chile issue in 1970 was the fact that Chile was developing cybernetics and they were trying to control their economy. Now, at that time, you got to remember 1970, you know, we had problems with Russia, you know, the Soviet Union, you know, we were still in the Cold War. We were ramping down Vietnam, or trying to ramp down Vietnam. We had a lot of civil unrest that was going on. And the thought was that you can't develop the cybernetics in Chile as a backbone for a controlled economy. So guess what? It's in our backyard. Can we allow cybernetics to take place? We're, in theory, that they would be able to control their economy, and at the same time, people, companies from the United States were losing their property from the regime. They had companies and manufacturing in Chile that were being taken over. They were being seized and turned into state property, and they were building a cybernetic network. Now, would it have worked with the technology that they had at the time? No, but the theory there is the very basis of Amazon. Amazon, the way it works with the orders, with knowing where products are, with using robots to get the stuff out of the storage, and quick delivery and all that, cybernetics, that's Amazon. Now, did they have the technology in 1970 to really make it work? No. But I'd much rather have cybernetics developed in a free society than in a socialistic society. That's the reason why we knocked them out. Why? Why doesn't he say this? Why doesn't he say it? There was a reason to knock out and overthrow Chile, to knock out the cybernetics.
Regime in South America over the past 50 years, tortured people, disappeared people. I mean, every example of the United States trying to go in and interfere in Central and South America has ended badly. My God, it almost ended Ronald Reagan's presidency after he won 49 states with the Iran-Contra crisis. It never, it never ends well, David. Do you have an example of the United States?
It never ends well. I'll tell you the reason why it never ends well. It's not because of the missions wrong. It's because of the people that are doing the covert operations, aka the CIA, because almost everything the CIA does is fucked up.
The CIA are using efforts like this to remove a Central or South American government where it doesn't end up blowing up in our face and causing even more chaos on the ground, more destabilization on the ground, and more hatred toward the United States on the ground.
Okay, Morning Joe, let's just not do anything and just let Russia and China take our lunch. Take our 2 acres of our 5-acre farm. Okay, Okay, Morning Joe. Let's just play patty cake with China. China. All right, now let's play this out. Let's do a mental game here. All right, mental simulation. Let's not do anything in South America and let Russia and China do whatever the hell they want. All right, and then all of a sudden China takes over Taiwan, and all of a sudden we don't have freedom of navigation anymore around the 9-dash line, and all of a sudden our allies in the Pacific are all worried about expansionism of China. What are you going to do now? It's going to be a lot harder to be able to get them out of our backyard and then get into the Asian theater. Meanwhile, we could clean up our backyard and make sure the Russians and the Chinese aren't there, and then hit China if they invade Taiwan. Now, which option, if you're in a fork in the road, which option is the better option? The Trump doctrine or the Morning Joe doctrine?
Makes it harder for diplomats like Marco Rubio to do their job following our bungled efforts in Central and South America.
You know, Joe, I would have said a few months ago that Colombia was an example of the United States helping a country escape the clutches of the most ruthless narco traffickers, helping them run what amounted to covert action over years in the jungles against the alliance of drug dealers and rebels. But even that, Donald Trump decided, for reasons that are still unclear to me, he wasn't comfortable with. So Colombia is now on the out list. I've tried to sit down with retired CIA officers over the last month or two who served in Latin America and put to them exactly the question that you asked. Did any of this stuff that you did through your careers work out very well? And the answer is usually not, because of the difficulty of recruiting operatives in these governments in Latin America who are democratic forces themselves.
Okay, so you hit them with a mechanized military instead of militias run by the CIA. That's the answer. It's B-2 bombers. It's Tomahawk missiles. It's kicking ass. Not militia here and militia there and militia everywhere.
Who can break free of Cuban influence. The Cubans are very active in Venezuela and throughout the hemisphere. And fundamentally, the lack of a base to create new regimes. This is familiar to us from Iraq and Afghanistan. You don't just put it in water, stir, shake, and you have a democratic regime. It really has to come from the people. And to see us making these mistakes in our hemisphere is unfortunate. I'll say one thing for Trump is in support of the broad effort. We do need to pay more attention to our own hemisphere. That's a fact. We don't need to pay attention to it in terms of fomenting regime change and seizing vessels and blowing little drug boats out of the water. We need to pay attention in terms of consistent, sustained involvement in helping the governments, cultural ties.
Oh, wait a minute. Hitting drug boats with smart bombs actually is improving our tactics just in case that we have a war with China in the Pacific, because the Navy is going to be super, super, super important. So having that knowledge of hitting small boats running very fast, potentially even drones that are on the water or under the water or above the water, will be really important. You ever thought about that? That it's actually target practice for a war with China? No, it didn't even cross his mind. It didn't even cross his mind. I would like to know if he's served in the military, because this guy sounds like a dipshit.
In all those senses, I think Latin America emphasis is overdue, but not in the way that it's being conducted now.
Well, certainly in foreign policy circles, there's belief the U.S. has ignored its own backyard for far too long. But this president's approach to the Western Hemisphere, it's not just Venezuela. Let's remember, he talked about seizing the Panama Canal. He talked about taking Greenland. He wants Canada as the 51st state. That's the approach.
What's wrong with that? I mean, really, what is wrong with that? The Canadians would be better off being integrated with us. Greenland would be better off being integrated with us than Denmark. I mean, think about that. You're Greenland. Would you rather be a Denmark citizen, being a part of the Commonwealth of Denmark, or being a state of the United States? I mean, let's get real here. And again, it's about the defense grid. It's about the Iron Dome. It's about knocking out missiles that could come our way, nuclear and non-nuclear. Oh. See that face on his? Oh. I have zero respect for people like him. Zero. None. They're dumb. They're just dumb.
To this point, we'll see where he turns next after Venezuela. But David Rowe, let's talk about the Maduro regime and what seems to be a ticking clock here. The president continues to up the pressure. More and more military assets, including even this week, have moved to the region. Maduro, though, has made pretty clear he's put his nation on.
Just imagine if President Harris was in office and there was a decision, strategic decision, to do the exact same thing that Trump's doing. Knock out the narco-terrorists, do regime change. MS now would totally rewrite their script and say the Democratic Party is all right. But if Trump's doing it and the Republicans are doing it, they're all wrong. MS now, it's more like MS for the Democrats now. Or maybe it's MS for the narco-terrorists now. Or maybe it's MS for China now.
Alert, suggesting he thinks some sort of conflict may be coming, strikes on land or more. What's the latest you've heard as to the approach? But more than that, how long can the U.S. maintain this posture? Like, how long can that carrier group be there? Like, how long can the U.S. have this type of armada in the region? And at some point, is that going to force Trump to make a decision?
So the carrier does need to get resupplied and refurbished. So it's a matter of weeks is the general estimate I've heard. And there's no facility in the Caribbean that can do that. And there was a big strategic change, I think, this week. And this was this effort to block oil sales by Venezuela. And I talked to experts and former diplomats, and they've said that is a way to pressure the Maduro regime. But the New York Times story was by Simone Romero that was noted earlier. It will inspire nationalism among Venezuelans. To say out loud it's about the oil is exactly what Maduro wants. That will help him. So it's going to take a while, but he needs those oil sales to sort of pay soldiers to keep the government functioning. So that's the thing to watch.
Let's just think about this. If we sanction the oil and he can't pay his soldiers, and even let's just give him the benefit of the doubt, and you have civil unrest that is aligned with Maduro and against America's empire, if you still can't pay your soldiers, do you think your soldiers are going to fight? Absolutely not. So if you game theory this out, the way Trump is doing it is the better way to do it. Oh, Trump is bad all the time on MS Now.
Here, it's like a step back into history, and it's a colonialism. And I was in Europe just last week. There's a sense that Trump is creating spheres of influence, or he thinks we should go back to the 18th century the Americas is Americans, is our sphere of influence. And they feel in Europe, they're being abandoned to Russia. And Russia will have a sphere of influence that includes Europe and China.
The United States has given plenty of time to Europe to get their shit together and to be able to circumvent an aggressor. Why does the American taxpayer have to always bail out the Europeans? And if you think about it, American taxpayers paying for the defense primarily of Europe against Russia and the Soviet Union, while those individual countries within the European Union have social programs up the wazoo. And the only reason why they can afford those social programs is because the American taxpayer is supporting their security. Now, do you think that's fair? Meanwhile, China and Russia are digging their heels in our backyard? Where's the common sense? Oh, we don't have common sense in Washington. Why is that? Because you got a bunch of libtards.
Will have a sphere of influence that includes Asia. This is music to the ears of Vladimir Putin and President Xi in China. It's extraordinary. It's the U.S. stepping back from the world, and it just doesn't fit sort of modern technology, modern trade.
You really think that? Now, with Russia, they're thinking, well, the United States isn't going to be boots on the ground for Ukraine. But you really think about China? You got to remember, getting into South America is pushing Russia and China out. So China's probably going, well, wait a minute. Let's take a look at how the United States is moving their military, how they're going to execute the operation in Venezuela. This may be target practice for the big event in Taiwan. Why isn't this guy saying this? I mean, it's not rocket science. Really, it's not. Why can't he say this? Come on. I know it's in you. You can say it.
Young people want to live in Venezuela and other countries, so I just don't see how all this is going to work in the long term.
Mark Caputo, the White House, the Department of Defense seems undeterred by all the criticism it has received, not just from media reporting, but from Republicans. We heard Thomas Massie there as well, questioning the methods here. What is the White House's end goal, as far as you can tell, talking to your sources? A small boat here, a small boat there. What's the end game?
Regime change. 2 or 3 days before Trump took office, Axios I wrote the first story saying that they're going to have a policy of regime change. So that story is bearing out here pretty well. Now, that having been said, the main thing that people have to remember is, yes, all of those parade of horribles in South America and Latin America have occurred under U.S. leadership. But one thing left out of the conversation, one thing left out of what Thomas Massie said was Panama. Panama in 1989 was invaded by the United States. Manuel Noriega, the dictator, the leader of Panama at the time, was indicted as a drug trafficker. The United States invaded, snatched him, flew him here to Miami, and then after he was indicted, criminally convicted him, and he went to jail. And that, for the administration, is the template. It's not Arbenz, it's not Allende, it's not what happened in Colombia, it's what happened in Panama. Now, does that mean they're actually going to invade? Not sure, but we appear closer than ever. In the end, no one really knows. It's up to Donald Trump. Everything that's being done up to this point is about, in the phrase of Marco Rubio, as he's told people behind closed doors, quote, preserving the president's optionality. So if Donald Trump suddenly wants to flip the switch and bomb or invade Venezuela, he can. But until such time and until he decides to do it, he's not and we're not. So it's a sort of wait-and-see approach, and as David Ignatius said, just sort of slowly squeezing more and more pressure on Maduro to see if he cracks or, ultimately, if he leaves.
And in a state of recent interviews, the president, including yesterday on a phone call with Kristen Welker of NBC News, not shying away from the possibility of regime change in Venezuela. MS Now senior national security reporter David Rode, thank you for being with us this morning. We appreciate it.
I don't know. We got a lot of talking heads out there. There are a bunch of dipshits. And they don't have the same ethos as the Romans. You know, they're a bunch of weaklings. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And how else are you going to be entertained if you don't support the work that I do? Please take my advice, get the products that I offer on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Make sure you use discount 5, you get $5 off anywhere. You spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Get the drops. These are structural nanosilver. It'll help to neutralize. The moment you have that throat irritation, hit it with the drops. If there are people around you that are not feeling well, take the drops prophylactically. They're very high quality. You can get it in honey and lemon, cherry flavor, or also blueberry. Get a few days for your household. Be prepared for the winter season. Super important. Very high quality. Go to my store, help support the work that I do, because where else are you going to get entertained? All right. Let's see what's going on in some of the other news that is happening. All right, let's listen into National Review that was just published about why does Bernie Sanders want to stop AI and sabotage the American future? Now, I think there are some problems with AI. There are some benefits from AI, so I don't know what this guy's going to say. But let's listen in, and I'll give you my opinion.
Do not get a consolidation loan until you see this. Did you know that on most credit card statements, there's a warning that tells you how long you'll...
If you can believe it, Bernie Sanders has come up with an idea that may be worse than all his other bad ideas.
I will be pushing for a moratorium on the construction of data centers that are powering this unregulated sprint to develop and deploy AI.
Hey everyone, I'm Rich Larry of National Review, and we shouldn't be surprised when a socialist comes up with a ruinously stupid idea that would make us all poor, harm the country's economic future and its national security. So here we are, Bernie Sanders playing to type. Now, data centers, of course, are necessary to the development of AI. There are all sorts of complaints about what are essentially big warehouses housing all the supercomputing power you need to develop AI. People don't like being around them, the local residents. They might be noisy. They guzzle a ton of energy. But these aren't the kind of complaints that Bernie Sanders is making here in his little video manifesto. He wants to stop AI itself, and it's worth looking at some of the reasons why. Of course, part of it for Bernie is that the wrong people are developing AI.
Who is aggressively pushing these technologies? Well, surprise, surprise. It happens to be the very wealthiest people on earth, people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Peter Thiel.
He has 5 homes. He's a multimillionaire. And he believes in communism.
Bill Gates and other multi-billionaires.
So there you have it. The class enemies are developing this technology. This is so idiotic on so many levels. But one of them is that, yes, of course, very rich people and very big companies are making these sort of investments because they are the only ones that have the kind of scale to do it.
I think that these very, very rich men want even more wealth and even more power. And for a whole bunch of reasons, that is very dangerous.
Now here, he has a point. These are rich people who want to get richer. I don't think that's a bad thing. Would we really prefer that they all go to the island of Capri and live in a mansion?
here's the problem with people that are uber wealthy. They have a tendency to control elections through PAC money. Now, if you can get the money out of politics, then you weaken that power dynamic. Now, of course, they'll still have some power, but if you can get rid of the PACs, if you can clean up the lobbying money, then it will be more of an equal footing between the wealthy versus the non-wealthy in terms of picking your representative. So super wealthy people are affecting the elections. That's just a fact. All right. Just look at what happened with Harris. She raised $2 billion and blew it in like 7 days. Can you imagine if she had the budget of our economy of 20, what do we have, an economy of 28 trillion? 23, 24 trillion? Can you imagine how she would spend the money? She spends money worse than a drunken sailor. So you got to get the money out of politics. So that's a problem, for sure. And I'm concerned about AI in terms of the use of it in developing unconventional weapons, especially biologics or chemical. And I'm concerned about AI taking jobs or restructuring the job market so fast that it causes harm to the economy.
A life of ease and don't do anything productive the rest of their lives, these incredibly talented people, why would we want that? And yes, they want to get richer, but how do you do that? Well, you sell more things, or you develop new technology, or you do both. Again, these are all things that increase the net welfare of everyone around them and the rest of society. Right? So, yeah, they want to get rich, they want prestige, they like the idea of being first, they want their company to be bigger, they want their
All you got to do is do this. These rich people create companies. You can buy those companies if they're publicly traded. And as the stock goes up, you get richer too. Now, will you be as rich? No, because you won't have as many shares. But all you got to do is, if you want to be like Elon, if you want to be like a junior Elon, just buy his companies and you just hold, and eventually you get rich. I mean, think about it. If you bought Tesla when the IPO was released or 6 months after, you'd be a lot more wealthy. Now take the same idea with SpaceX when it gets released. You could buy and hold for a long time. SpaceX looks like it's going to be the next AT&T. It's going to dominate telecommunications. It's going to dominate high-speed internet. It's going to dominate warfare in space. And then you add in, they're creating almost like a geosphere. All right? Something similar, like a geosphere of these linked satellites that will run AI. So their cloud to calculate for the AI will be in space where it's really cold. And it's running a power system that is solar. And you won't even have to worry about what Bernie Sanders thinks. And so we'll be able to farm our land instead of having it plastered with a bunch of solar panels.
to be more dominant. These aren't necessarily the most altruistic or high-minded motivations, but this is how human nature works. And if people didn't feel those sort of impulses and that sort of ambition, everyone would sit on the couch all day watching daytime TV, and our society would be much poorer and worse off and less happy because of it. So no, you don't need to depend on the selflessness of entrepreneurs to advance your society. Bernie Sanders is a socialist, so he's probably not even aware of this iconic Adam Smith quote making this point. It's not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own self-interest. We address ourselves not to their humanity, but to their self-love, and never talk to them of our own necessities, but of their advantages. Just so. Another problem with how Bernie views this is Elon Musk being very rich doesn't hurt anyone else, doesn't make anyone else less well off. This is not a zero-sum proposition. And I guarantee you, by the way, among these companies competing to develop the best AI, there'll be a winner or two that will become incredibly dominant in this sector because of that. But it's also assured that one of these companies or these companies will help develop a technology, and someone else will come along with a very bright idea, a new way of looking at things, and use to undermine their position in this business. In other words, they'll plant the seeds of their own destruction in a way we can't imagine and they can't imagine at the moment. This is how a vibrant free market economy works. But of course, Bernie is on the verge of despair.
What will AI and robotics mean economically for the working class of this country? Well, don't listen.
I started on Tucket 14 years ago, and today we have more than 85 stores. I've talked a million times about our perfect untucked shirts. But what I haven't talked about is...
Well, don't listen to me. Listen to the people who are developing those technologies. Elon Musk recently said, quote, AI and robots will replace all jobs. Working will be optional, end quote.
Now, Bernie contradicts himself here because earlier in his video, he says there's no way that the people developing this technology are thinking about the potential downside consequences, when in fact, some of the starkest warnings we've gotten about such consequences are from the people developing the technology. And Sanders quotes Elon Musk to this effect. I would just say, Elon Musk, great guy, many virtues, should be taken very seriously, but sometimes he exaggerates. Sometimes he exaggerates just a little bit. And that statement is probably an example, but Bernie Sanders is taking it deadly seriously.
If AI and robotics eliminate millions of jobs and create massive unemployment, how will people survive if they have
that does happen? It might. It's a low probability, but if all jobs were abolished, right? Our system of government is such that there will be regulation to prevent that from happening or to continue. And eventually people will go back to work. Now, you have to kind of like play this out. Okay, if the United States has all this debt that it's issued, but it can't tax when the economy collapses, how are they going to pay their debt? So the government will have to go bankrupt. Well, how are you going to pay for the social programs? Oh, you just print the money. Well, that's hyperinflation then. You'll have a riot. You'll have something that is not the American Revolution. You'll have something that's like the French Revolution with the guillotine. There's a self-correcting mechanism with war. Now, people would say, well, this sounds like Terminator. The humans versus the robots. Maybe. But what's the Achilles heel of the transhumanist movement? What's the Achilles heel of the big AI robotic movement? Energy. We were designed, the humans, emerged, evolved in nature to not need electricity. Now, does that mean a lot of people will die because of the lack of comforts of the modern society? Yeah. but mankind will survive. That's not the case with AI. So the Achilles heel for AI is energy. So if you kill the grid, you don't have it anymore.
That represents a huge misunderstanding, right? So if AI eliminates a ton of jobs, or all jobs even, that's only happening because it's much better at doing those jobs and more productive. So the productivity of the economy would massively increase. You only get wealthier when productivity does increase, so it'd be a wealthier society. The government presumably...
I think there's going to be an awful lot of people that are dislocated that won't be able to pay their mortgage. And then if you have enough of them, then guess what? Lehman all over again times 10. So I think he's understating some of the downside risk here.
Have more tax revenue and would be able to take care of all these people who weren't working. We already do a fair amount of that now. So I'm not saying this scenario is going to happen, but if we play along with the hypothetical, that's clearly what would happen. And I'm not sure why Bernie Sanders would be frightened of this prospect, because he's a huge supporter of the welfare state. Now, to this point, these kind of catastrophic scenarios have never come about. Doesn't mean that there aren't downsides to technology. There are. There are downsides to everything, right? Social media has had negative consequences. The rise of the iPhone has negative consequences. But these sort of predictions about mass job loss because of technology, to this point, have never come true. Keynes, the great economist, warning in the 1930s, the rise of labor-saving devices were going to eliminate the need for labor. JFK worrying about the effects of automation in the 1960s. Look at a couple specific sectors of the economy. The rise of personal computers eliminated the need for a bunch of typists. These were jobs overwhelmingly held by women. Did that decimate the prospects of women in the workforce? No. Look at the rise of spreadsheets. Eliminates the need for a lot of bookkeepers and clerks. Did that eliminate accounting? No. Accounting got more sophisticated. In a dynamic economy that's getting more productive and richer, there's always flux in the kind of jobs you have. A majority of the current jobs we have in this country exist in occupational categories that didn't exist prior to 1940. So going after these data centers to try to end AI makes about as much sense as trying to end the mining of coal on the cusp of the Industrial Revolution in Britain, which was fueled by coal. It makes as much sense as destroying new technology in the 19th century in the textile industry. Wait a minute. They did that. Those were the Luddites. On top of all this, you're not going to stop AI even if you try, because China is not going to stop researching AI. Neither are other countries. And if you deny U.S. companies data centers here in the U.S., they just go abroad and find data centers there and conduct the research that way. So this is a fantasy on top of everything else. Now, with regard to the practical question, are these things a drag on the electricity grid? Yeah, sure. But the way to deal with that is to unleash more American energy, build more energy infrastructure, and have a more rational energy policy. At the end of the day here, no matter how much Bernie Sanders...
And a more efficient energy grid. I mean, we waste a lot of energy. If we are more efficient on the use of the energy, we won't have a problem.
Calls himself a progressive when he's not calling himself a socialist. He is a reactionary socialist. He is attempting to sabotage the future based on his imagined vision of what the past once was. Don't let him do it. I'm Rich Lowry, over and out.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Goodnight Formula. This has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. So you get into those cycles of REM sleep. 3 to 5 cycles are needed per night to get into deep sleep and REM sleep, to detoxify your central nervous system, to consolidate memory, and to be well rested. When you take this regularly, every night, you are slowing down the aging process and improving your brain function.
So please go to my store, get the Goodnight formula, consolidate that memory. You don't want to be stupid. Now, the multivitamin. This is easy to digest, and it has the multivitamins that you need for proper enzymatic activity, so your cells perform properly. Again, it's easy to digest, and is part of the foundation of my anti-aging protocol. Take this every day, and add the probiotic. You can get the probiotic in veggie cap version or the powdered version. I prefer the powdered version. Now, by taking a good probiotic, you're improving your gut biome, you're improving your immune system at the gut level, you're allowing your nutrients to be absorbed properly, your metabolism will be better, your sleep will be better, you'll get rid of brain fog. A lot of people don't realize that if you have a good gut biome, you actually sleep better. In addition, your skin will improve. So you get lots of benefits by having a good gut biome, and good health starts at the gut. So please go to my store and get the probiotics and take the multivitamin. Take that every day. And guess what? We're in the winter season. You need to get the vitamin D3, and this is dual purpose. This will help with gene expression. It's a gene expression cofactor. Vitamin D3 will get rid of cells that are infected. It helps to get cells to go into apoptosis. Vitamin D3 will help to absorb calcium. If you do resistance training, you'll be able to build denser bone. And vitamin D3, especially if you stack it with K2, MK7, will help with your cardiovascular health. So please, go to my store, get the vitamin D3. Make sure you use discount 5 to get $5 off. And if you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift till supplies last. All right. Live now looks like they have some new information about the Brown University. So let's see what's going on.
Success Academy is the #1 K-12 charter school in New York City. #1 means excellence in arts and athletics. National chess masters, Broadway performers, top athletes, and more. It means educating for 13 continuous years, with outcomes that speak for themselves. It means 100% of graduates accepted to 4-year colleges and prepared for a fast-changing world. Choose the best. Choose success. Apply now at applytosa.org.
The joy for life in every car.
You're looking at video right here coming in from WBZ out of Salem, New Hampshire. That is where last night law enforcement heavily surrounded a storage unit where they say inside they discovered the body of their suspect. Those investigators say he took his own life shooting himself and had likely been dead, potentially there for several days. A lot to discuss about this case as it has played out here.
That's new. I didn't know that.
Cash, Homeland Security expert who served in President George W. Bush's administration, now the president of Frontier Security Strategies. Thank you so much, Ed, for taking the time to be here with us today.
Morning, Josh.
Good morning. Well, first off, I do want to ask you, because you heard the Rhode Island Attorney General there essentially saying it was a witness who kind of helped to piece all of this together and lead to a solution, so to speak, for an active investigation that didn't really have too many credible leads at the time. So what does that say to you about kind of the importance of the public in a situation like this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we talk 30,000 foot level, see something, say something. That kind of goes across the board, whether something suspicious at an airport or a situation like this. After they released the additional photos and more clear videos, I think it was either Tuesday or Wednesday night, I'm sure a $50,000 reward assisted as well. And there are hundreds of leads that come in, but what is real, what is not real? What's coming from halfway across the country from someone versus someone that was, as we've seen, right down the street that saw this person in live in person.
And these are some of the photos that were seen in the court documents that were released late yesterday as all of this kind of was unfolding here and we got more information. How challenging, though, is it to determine whether incidents like the Brown University shooting and the MIT professor's murder are connected? Because they have now been connected, and authorities say that this man is responsible for the 3 deaths of the people that you see on your screen there.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see where this connection was, because Brown University, MIT, 2 very influential universities, and this Mr. Valente went to Brown. So what is the motive here? I'm very interested to see how that will happen, how they'll discover that. And you'll look at his social media, financial records, all across the board, because he graduated there in 2001. This isn't a recent student that got expelled from MIT or Brown that is upset. So very interesting to see how this plays out and the motive for this.
One thing that's interesting here is we mentioned kind of the fact that, the tips came in here, but one of the other important notes is that the suspect is no longer alive. The suspect found dead there at that storage unit, with investigators saying he may have been dead for several days. The most recent of the crimes was on Monday night. So what I wanted to ask you is here, when you have a shooter who is deceased, how does that maybe make it more difficult for investigators who are working to kind of piece all of this together?
Yeah, they would, of course, want the shooter alive so that they can interview him and find the reasoning for this. But no, they will talk to family members, friends, work colleagues, and try and put the pieces together and determine why this person did this. Financial records across the board here, and come up with an answer of why he did this. Were those students targeted, or was someone else targeted, a similar professor at the Brown University? It's very interesting to see those 2, MIT and Brown, that specific professor at his house as well, not just at the university. So how did he know that professor, and who did he know at Brown that he might have been targeting?
And when you talk about a situation like this, how difficult can it be? How do investigators go about determining whether we're talking about a lone wolf attack or something that is more organized involving multiple people?
Yeah, that is a tough one. They will see if someone did assist him, if he had an accomplice. You look back to the Boston Marathon bombing. They targeted that specific area for a cause. They were foreign individuals that wanted to make a big statement. So yeah, this will all come out with the investigation. The investigation isn't over yet. I mean, everyone's at ease now that the shooter has been captured, deceased. But now we'll peel back the onion and learn a lot from this individual.
And as the investigation,
I didn't realize he was dead for a few days or a couple days. All right, let's dive into a clip from Fox talking about youth sports and that there's a crisis going on, according to experts. So let's listen in on here.
Caught up in what's going on, the horrific stories that happened over the weekend, but there was something really important happening in Congress yesterday. Lawmakers focusing on the cost of youth sports. Here are just some of the growing issues impacting children and their parents, especially if you're like some of the 70% of parents living paycheck to paycheck. On average, if you want your kid to play sports, not go pro, it's about $1,000. That's up almost 50% since the pandemic. $30 to $4 billion a year. This has become an industry to play in your league, to put your son or daughter in the best situation possible for them to be successful. What parent doesn't want that? Kids from low-income houses are 24% homes, 24% play for less than the high-income houses than their peers. So if you're
I want to dive into this a little bit. I think to build team spirit, to build a foundation on how to work in a team, sports is a great way to do it. In addition, it will help with the health of the youth because they'll be more fit, they'll be active. Their brain function will probably be better because if you notice that people that are building things or constructing or making art or playing an instrument, when there is a brain activity on top of a kinematic activity, a movement activity, they work together, they're synergistic, and it helps with brain function, especially while these kids are developing their brain, because it's wiring. The brain is wiring because of this neuroplasticity. So certain areas of the brain will prune and other areas will start to connect. So sports, I think, is a really important feature in terms of the social, the health aspect of it, and brain function. All right. But there's also something that many people maybe don't realize. Maybe some do. I'm not sure the percentage. Your ability to get into a really good school for a kid radically increases if you have some sports acumen in hockey, or football, or lacrosse, or volleyball, whatever, basketball, right? So this is the reason why the newscaster, Kilman, said to improve your chances of success for your child. Now, it's not impossible to be successful without sports. There are many people that are. But you'll notice that people, especially at the very prestigious universities, one of the ways to get in is through sports. All right? But you have to also have academic chops. All right? Now, what was I saying earlier in the video? Not enough kids are taking sports. Maybe it's because of finances. Maybe it's because they're just eggheads. But the thing is that we're starting to develop a generation that's now willing to fight. The reason why sports were instituted in schools was to have a group that could be trained in warfare if needed. That's the reason why. Sports didn't just pop up because it was fun. It was to develop males so if they needed to go to war, they could. And you have to remember, at that time, we didn't have a standing army. Normally it was a war, and then we brought the levels of the troops down radically. Now we have a standing army. But the thing is that sports started for war. So if you take that away, or if students aren't in sports, they don't have that warrior ethos. And hence the problem that we have with Brown University. The students weren't willing to step up and fight. They hid. The students weren't willing to coordinate, to corner a 48-year-old that's overweight.
Make their way in sports, you have less of a chance to be successful, and it's harder for your parent, perhaps, to write that check. Oftentimes, you're from low-income areas where it's hard to get fields. And 70% of kids drop out of organized sports by the time they get to 9th grade. Think about that. So what indeed is the point? Our next guest highlighted these issues yesterday during a House subcommittee. Let's bring in Tom Ferry, Executive Director of the Aspen Institute, Sports Program, Sports and Society Programs. Tom, I love the topic. Thrilled you guys were tackling it. What came out of it?
I mean, honestly, I thought there was great agreement about the value of sports and building healthy kids in terms of military readiness, strong cohesive communities, bringing down healthcare costs. We all understand the value proposition that kids who play sports are more likely to do better in life, right? A lot of kumbaya around that. There's a lot of kumbaya also around the idea that a lot of pressure on families, the cost pressures, but also the time pressures, Brian. Our research shows that the average family spends 3 hours and 20 minutes a day on their kids' youth sports. And if you got like 3 or 4 or 5 kids, that's a hard thing to do. So people are feeling it from when kids are 7 and 8 years old, and they're like, this feels like too much.
So it's not that every parent wants their kid to go pro. That's some of them. But they just want their kids to be successful. And there's winners and losers in every big game and little game. And you know how they feel. So you want to try to cushion that feeling or push them forward to experience that. So a lot of times parents' hearts are in the right place. Why did it become expensive?
It's become expensive because when you and I were growing up, we had what we call in-town recreation leagues, right? Classmates playing with classmates at a local field. One season we go, low economic barriers to entry, low time barriers to entry. But what's happened is we've created these travel teams, which used to only exist in high school. They pushed down to middle school, and now they go all the way down to second grade. And once we create these trial-based travel teams, which are often private, the cost goes from a couple $100 a year to several $1,000s a year. And it starts structurally pushing aside a lot of kids who can't afford it, or they're just late bloomers or whatever. And so this is what's happened. We've allowed the travel team environment to sort of take over.
Interesting.
Right. So, for example,
back in the 70s, and the early 80s, I would say almost during the summer, we either played baseball, street hockey, or football almost every day in the summer. And during the time of the year where it was good weather, during school, we would play after school. So we were always active. It was just part of, but that was before computers, PCs. So like the Commodore 64, that was my first computer. The Commodore 64, I didn't have the Commodore 64 until 6th grade. So, before 6th grade, everything was outside. And we didn't have we didn't have travel teams or anything like that. There was organized, and then there was like street, kind of like street or backyard kind of, stuff that was going on. We played football every day. And we'd have we would have probably like 8 people, eight kids or 10 kids. So it was like 5 per side for the team. It was perfect. But you have to have a population. You have to have your neighborhood have enough kids of similar ages to be able to do that. So a big problem now is there's too much technology. People are in home, in their air conditioner, with their air conditioner, and they're not outside playing, and they're not playing football, or they're not playing baseball or whatever. All right. But the other part of it is that there's not enough kids in these neighborhoods to be able to assemble a team like football. You can play catch with 1 or 2 or 3, right? But you need it. You need a larger kid population of similar age groups. You don't have that today. So that's another big problem for just spontaneous outdoor play. So what happens is that you have to have more formalized leagues that travel around because no one has kids anymore. So it goes back to the very thing that I said. If you don't have God, country, and family, you don't have a productive society. You don't have a growing society. You have a declining society. This is another perfect example of it. And hence you have kids that go to Brown University and other universities that when there is a shooter in their building, they don't know how to react. Now, I think personally that kids today should have training, defense training, be active in sports, and also go through a program like the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts and learn about how to camp, how to work with teams, work with little material and get stuff done. Because a lot can be learned from that. A lot can be learned.
instead of this coddled generation that's a bunch of dipshits.
And I'm going to pay for a hotel. I have to take a day from work to go over there. Then I'm paying for that tournament. And then you watch your kid play for 3 days. You got to go to 3 meals. And then you got to drive back. And that is indeed your weekend.
And the only ones that can do this are the soccer moms. So you have to be high income. That's a soccer. What he's talking about is a soccer mom, or a football mom, or a hockey mom.
Tournament can be done just around the block, but no one pays hotels. No one pays for tournament fees if the kids are playing for free. So do you think parents or organizers are cashing in like everywhere in society? They see kids as commodities?
Yes.
Yeah, they do. I mean, look,
for sure.
$40 billion a year, according to our research, is flowing through youth sports. And that's just the parent spend. That's not the public spend. That's not private equity. Just parents. Okay.
Just right.
Right.
That's almost
And
twice
so
as much
because
money.
it's so expensive, then it starts, there's an incentive. Get the kid into a prestigious university because of the cost. So then it ramps up the competition of those universities. Now the kid has to be a piano star and a hockey star and have a 4.5 GPA. Oh, and by the way, by age 3, you have to have a nonprofit that's, generating $1 billion. It's getting out of control. It's getting out of control. And people can't afford it anymore. Now, maybe it'll collapse. Maybe, it'll eventually get back to reality. But it's got a long way to go before that.
Through the NFL. So, yeah, it's become a commercialized environment.
Just give me a little bit of hope. Tell me a couple of things that you guys came out of this that you could do right away.
Bring back recreation leagues. Have park and recs. Say, this is really important that we have low-cost sports up through at least 6th or 7th or maybe 8th grade and prioritize the field space. This can be done. We don't need the federal government to come in and solve the problem here. This can be done on a community-by-community basis by a community saying, look, we want sports to be accessible and a great experience for all kids, and we're going to use our fields and our gym space to make sure that those local leagues come back.
Definitely.
Right. Have fun again.
And not only that,
don't have to coach everything. Tom Perry, thanks so much for you guys.
Not only that, work with the nonprofits, because the nonprofits can help with these youth leagues. Catholic Charities has one of them. They have a youth league, Catholic Youth League. CYO, the Catholic Youth Organization, is one of the programs within Catholic Charities that helps youth into sports to work in their local community, right? And they get donations from prestigious athletes, right? And sell memorabilia and autographs, and that's how they kind of fund the organization. But the thing is, it allows kids in the inner city to be able to participate in sports, to reduce diabetes, to reduce health problems. Because I'll tell you, kids today are really out of shape, and you got to get them active, right? But not only that, it gives them confidence. It allows for team building. You get a lot of benefits from it. So it's the municipalities, the mayors, the principals of the school, the leaders of the community working together to push this at a local level and work with the nonprofits to do it.
The Aspen Institute, I'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Brian.
Hey, it's Will Kane. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to...
Alrighty, let's see. Expert Torches, 2-state solution. Yeah, what was freaky is about this NASCAR driver dying in a plane crash. We'll play that. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin B complex. This is really important to take if you're 40 years of age or older. Why? It'll rev up your metabolism. Your cellular metabolism starts to go down when you get older. Well, you can reverse that. And that's one great way to slow down the aging process. So take the vitamin B complex. The first 4 B vitamins helps with the electron transport chain to build ATP so you have more energy, so your cells and tissues perform better. The other B vitamins in vitamin B complex will help with the cellular metabolism to improve. And vitamin B12 will help to protect neurons. So you're protecting your neurons and revving up your metabolism, and you have more energy. Super important. So please go to my store, get the vitamin B complex. All right, let's listen in to the former NASCAR driver that was killed.
I had a crazy idea. We were surprised that no one had done it before.
Success doesn't follow a formula.
Right now, I do want to take you out to this live look that we do have right here at the scene of yesterday's plane crash. Again, this is a live look here as investigators are still working to figure out what caused the crash that killed NASCAR legend Greg Biffle and his family in North Carolina. The National Transportation Safety Board and the FAA are looking through the crash site in Statesville, North Carolina, and you can see that happening right there on your screen, about 40 miles north of Charlotte. That is where we do find Fox's Asher Red joining us now live to talk much more about what he's seeing out there. And Asher, I can see the crews there are right behind you working that active investigation.
Well, Josh, the chart remains of that flight are just behind me. This is about as close as we can get to the crash site, and several investigators are out there. They've been coming and going as they need to. Now, this crash killed 7 people, including former NASCAR driver Greg Biffle, his wife, and their 2 children. A Cessna 550 that belongs to Biffle crashed while attempting to land here at the Statesville Regional Airport. Flight records show the plane was headed to the Bahamas, but shortly after taking off, FlightAware, which is a flight tracking website, showed that the plane looped back around before hitting the ground. At the time of the crash, the fog around the airport limited the pilot's visibility to only 5 miles. Folks who live near this airport say it's not uncommon to see corporate jets fly over this small town.
Race season, we constantly have jets flying over the house. I guess in the back of your mind, you always know that something could happen, but you never really worry about it.
Biffle retired from NASCAR in 2016 after 19 NASCAR Cup victories, 20 Xfinity Series wins, and 17 checkered flags in the Craftsman Truck Series. He also became a champion off the track when he used his personal helicopter to deliver supplies and internet service to Hurricane Helene victims.
I've watched him since I was a kid. He was one of my favorite drivers, and the way he drove, and he inspired us all. This event impacted everybody, and this is just a sad day. You know, I don't want to see what was back there.
And the airport director says the airport will be closed until they can get that debris off the end of the runway and make it safer to use again. He says that could take time. Josh?
All right, Asher Red there at Fox News following all of the latest, and we'll check back in with you, Asher, as more does develop. Thank you again for being.
I apologize for the loud background noise in that video. All right, let's listen to Bloomberg here.
AI than we are, but that control F works just fine. And so you're going to find that. You're going to find Control F, Donald Trump, or DJ Tate, right? DGT for Donald Trump, right? So you're going to, first of all, do that kind of thing, but then it's going to be a painstaking process. And again, kind of to the points that were made before, the legion of journalists who are ready to receive this, frankly, are very confident in their job. We don't have confidence not only in the fairness and objectivity, but quite frankly, if you look at the performance of this Department of Justice and the people they put in, you have some questions about their competency and their ability to deal with these large documents, both in the Department of Justice itself and the FBI that's supposed to be doing the investigation. So I'm putting my faith in journalism, at least on this one, in terms of getting the correct information out.
You've also got a Republican from Kentucky on the Oversight Committee saying pretty outright that if he doesn't see names of men who could be, charged with rape or other crimes, he's not going to believe, or he's going to know that they didn't release everything that they could release. Is he right? Are there things, we've been talking about what is getting redacted.
are there things that if they are not there, I mean, look, DOJ has said we're not getting all the documents at once, but what should we be looking for in absentia in these documents that could tell us what?
Well, a lot of these are going to center on what are called FBI 302s, which are the standard FBI report form. It's basically the equivalent of a police report that FBI agents do, their standard police report. So they're going to be looking in gaps in sequential Bates numbering. They're going to be looking for forms that refer to other forms that just aren't there. And it's a very interesting in terms of the politics and the split in the Republican Party because, you know, the Republican Party has always cast itself as the party of law and order and in favor of that. And if they don't see correct law and order and the respect for victims, they're going to have a real issue here, and there's going to be pushback. And also, I think there's got to be something else to keep in mind, and the people disclosing should know this. People have copies of these things. I frankly am surprised that nothing has been leaked before this. Somebody or several people have these documents in some hard drive someplace, and if they're not correctly disclosed and released to the public, they're going to get out eventually. I mean, don't forget, all Nixon's tapes eventually got out. And I think that's what will happen here. And that, quite frankly, is the fine. And I think also you can read these things. And I have a lot of experience reading FBI 302s and other large discovery packets. You develop an ability to see what's between the sheets, what's between the lines, and what's missing. And I'll tell you, as a criminal defense attorney, that's what you hone in on right away.
Robert, we have 1 minute left. I just have to ask you about what's going on over at the county center here, the change of the sign there today. And from what we understand, only Congress can change the name of the Kennedy Center. Is that legal?
It is absolutely not legal. And frankly, it's akin to renaming the Department of Defense, which shows that America is about defending democracy, to the Department of War. And simply it's not. I also think it's in very, very, very bad taste. It is called the John F. Kennedy Memorial Arts Center because he was an assassinated president of the United States, an event that many of us remember in our lives as a key event. And now Donald Trump wants to hone in, having not had that sacrifice.
Indeed, a living memorial here in Washington. Robert, it's great to see you. Thanks for your...
Let's play the plane crash of Greg on CNN.
Without headway, I can't imagine that I would ever be taking a chance.
Seven people were killed, among them retired NASCAR driver Greg Biffle. The private plane went down just after takeoff yesterday morning. Surveillance footage shows the moment that it went up in flames. It's unclear what caused the crash, but poor weather conditions were reported that morning. Biffle, his wife, and 2 children all died in the crash.
He just had the heart of gold. We didn't know him, per se, but just seeing the family, hearing about it, it hurts.
Joining me now, Mary Chavo, former Inspector General for the Department of Transportation. Mary, this is a really striking case, and I understand that the NTSB is sending half a dozen sort of work groups to investigate it. What are the things that they're going to be looking for?
Well, the NTSB is sending a pretty big team because there are a lot of these planes out here, and obviously there's a lot to be learned from this one. The teams are going to be looking at the maintenance of this aircraft. It was a 1981 plane. It had had some updates, probably had the engines changed out in about 1999 or thereabouts. Overhauls of the engines, anything maintenance related to this plane, any modifications. Its last airworthiness was just this year, its last checkup, so it looks fine, but the NTSB will dig deeply into the maintenance records and the maintenance record of the plane. They'll be looking at the piloting. The reports are there are 2 pilots on board. Mr. Biffle also had a pilot's license, so they'll be looking at the decisions they made and whether weather had anything to do with it. It was bad weather, there were 400-foot clouds and 1,000-foot ceiling. And then the piloting and the flying. This plane never really got above 2,000 feet, this high elevation airport. And as it was coming in on its emergency landing, it was very, very low. So we'll be looking at that. And then they'll check the fuel. Literally, the NTSB checks everything it can get.
Can you come back to the weather for a moment? I feel a little silly asking that, but at the time, I think that beyond rain, there was a helicopter nearby that had to land, right, due to poor weather. There was the cloud layers. It seemed like there were some elements there that made it a pretty rough day for flying.
That's right. Rough day for flying, as long as you have the minimums, and the minimums, the weather, the crosswinds, et cetera, can all be different for each plane. Every plane has its limits. But because there was a report that they had engine problems, the weather probably doesn't have anything to do with it, and the NTSB will, of course, be checking if there was icing. This plane has anti-ice systems, but they will check to see if there's any possibility that the weather affected the engines, affected the rate of climb, affected the airspeed. The airspeed wasn't steady either. The altitude fluctuated, the airspeed fluctuated. So they'll be looking at the weather. There's always a chance it did impact it, but right now it does not look like it.
Mary Schiavo, thanks so much. We'll be checking with you today. NTSB investigators are expected to arrive on the scene of a deadly private plane crash in North Carolina that killed 7 people. Among them, former NASCAR driver Greg Biffle, his wife, and 2 surveillance cameras actually captured the very fiery tragedy as it played out. Just horrible. CNN's Diane Gallagher is in North Carolina with much more on this. And this investigation really is just getting underway. What are you hearing?
Yeah, Kate, look, there's kind of an ache hanging over Charlotte right now. The NASCAR community is very tight-knit. Everyone kind of knows everyone. So there was a shock here. But the NTSB investigation is underway. Investigators arrived in Charlotte. They expect that investigation to take about a week as they try to determine what happened Thursday morning when that Cessna Citation C-550 turned back around shortly after takeoff and then crashed at the Statesville Regional Airport. That video, that doorbell video you showed that I obtained, the man told me that he heard a boom, his entire house shook, and then he felt a glow he could see come through his blinds because of the fire from that crash. Now, the families of the 7 people who were on board did release a joint statement expressing their grief, also gratitude for all of the kind outreach they say they have received so far. They requested privacy, but they did confirm that Greg and Christina Biffle and their young son Ryder and Greg's daughter Emma, Dennis Dutton and his son Jack, and Craig Wadsworth were all killed in that crash. Now, look, condolences have been pouring in from around the motorsports world for Greg Biffle, who was named one of NASCAR's top greatest 75 drivers in the history of the sport. He's also a NASCAR Hall of Fame nominee. In a statement, NASCAR talked about the Biff's passion for racing, integrity, and commitment to the sport, calling him a fierce competitor and a friend. But what we're hearing about even more today than what he did on the track was off the track. It was his efforts, he and his wife Christina, after Hurricane Helene. They literally, Greg was a licensed pilot, went out, rescued people, put supplies down from the skies. They continued for months after to bring aid to people who were affected in Western North Carolina, and from the governor to U.S. senators, members of Congress, and just fans of Greg Biffle. That's who many people are choosing to remember today.
Yeah, my goodness. Diane, thank you so much for that. What a tragedy. With me now, CNN safety analyst, former FAA safety inspector David Susi. It's good to see you, David. Thank you very much for being here. With what we know so far, much more to learn from NTSB, what's your first big question here?
The question is why the aircraft made this back turn to come back immediately right after takeoff, and why he wasn't able to make the runway. He landed short of the runway. His low altitude, was not able to maintain that altitude. So that's the first thing as an investigator I'd be looking at.
And David, on that note, I mean, I think we have an image of the flight path. It takes off from Statesville Airport. It gets some air. I think it gets altitude, but not much at all. And then turns around to try to return to the airport very clearly once again. And that is when it crashed. From your experience, what is the errors? What could have gone so wrong? And clearly it must have been happening immediately for that turnaround.
Well, some of the information you can gain from this is that if the aircraft took off and made that, it was a pretty stable takeoff, and then it made a good stable movement to come back around to the left side. So there wasn't any abrupt jumps up and down or anything like that. So it looks like the pilot was in control at the time. So the concern I have is that once it made that left turn and started coming back to the runway, rather than maintaining altitude, continued to descend. So that tells me that it's lack of power or lack of orientation by the pilots. So we have to look at both of those things. Unfortunately, this aircraft does not have a flight data recorder or any kind of voice recorder. So the investigators are going to have to rely on what the air traffic control information is, the communications there, which there was minimal at this point. They declared an emergency and came back around. But in that flight path too, you can notice that it's a pretty smooth descent. There's no abrupt change. So it tells me that they were in control of the airplane, but they lacked power to get back to the airport.
Very interesting. This plane was a Cessna Citation C550. You've worked on these planes before, David. In addition to not having data recorders that you're talking about, what else stands out? What is the safety record of these planes?
Well, the safety record is quite good, actually, because the aircraft is a very docile aircraft to fly with regard to corporate jets. It has a straight wing. It doesn't have a swept wing like you see a lot in the Learjets and other jets later. But this aircraft is very docile. It's easy to fly. There's a few things concerned. There was a crash back in 2006. And after that, the NTSB issued a warning that when you take off with this airplane, if you have to transition from visual flight, where you're just looking for people around you and you're maintaining flight by sight, if you have to transition from that to instruments, it can be a very big burden on this aircraft, because this aircraft, remember, is before glass cockpits. There's a lot of technology that's not available in this airplane that the current models would have. So when you transition that, then it could be a difficult situation for the pilot.
Very interesting, David. Your knowledge on safety when it comes to some of these planes is always.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the clarity factor. This will get rid of that brain fog, allow you to concentrate. Over time, it's going to improve your neuroplasticity, so you're going to be thinking faster. Your memory will improve. Take it every day. Drink it with filtered water. It's a very powerful neurostack. Omega-3 brings down LDL levels, increases your HDL levels, brings down inflammation, helps to prevent your red blood cells from sticking too much. Because if your red blood cells stick more than they're supposed to, you start getting clots. So this helps to prevent overclotting. Now, you should be taking omega-3 every day. Why? Because it helps with your cardiovascular system. And resveratrol. Resveratrol is something I've been taking for decades. It helps with youthful gene expression. It gets rid of cells that are in senescence. And it will soak up free radicals. And by soaking up free radicals, you're reducing the stress on the cell and in your tissues, improving the health of your mitochondria so you'll have more energy. And in your basal layer for your skin, this will improve that basal layer. So the skin cells will be healthier as they're rejuvenating. So please, go to my store, get the resveratrol. This stacks really well with C60, NAD+, ubiquinol, clarity factor. So a great stack here to help with youthful gene expression and to help with your skin, resveratrol. To help with your cardiovascular health, omega-3. And to help with brain function, clarity factor. Please go to my store, use discount 5, save some money. It's all caps, discount 5. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift till supplies last. All right, let's go to Bloomberg here. I think they're talking about Congress here.
In 2028, Christina, he has not announced a campaign for president in 2020.
He is not, but all of a sudden this has gone from nothing to a little bit of momentum because our colleagues from London were over here interviewing Peter Navarro,
That's right.
and they got something similar. Our amazing colleague Michelle Hussein asked him, who would you trust to continue this agenda? And I think we've got the sound for you here.
J.D. Vance is the vice president, and Marco Rubio. That would be, for example, a great ticket.
With who at the top of the ticket?
J.D. would be there, but Marco's already said that if J.D. runs, he wouldn't challenge him. But Marco, I love these guys. These are. I always admired Marco back in 2016. I always thought he was like of the people on that stage, the 16 Republicans. I always thought he was the sharpest tool in the shed, besides Donald Trump.
Interesting situation, and I'm wondering how Marco Rubio feels.
I thought the
this.
same thing, especially, yeah. But it's interesting because you've also got a president who's literally selling Trump 2028 hats
That's true.
in the White House.
So, Lisa, who's going to be the nominee? Are we doing this a little early?
It's way too early, and it's actually quite dangerous, I think, politically, because there is an audience of just one that's paying attention here right now, and anybody that's perceived to be getting out in front of the guy that is running the White House right now would be very unpopular. That's very unpopular positioning. And so, while I think Erica Kirk has every right to say whatever she wants to say about endorsements, because that's her prerogative, I also think that it is a very long way to go between now and then. And J.D. Vance is certainly the vice president. We've also seen plenty of vice presidents run and not be successful. So I think that there's a lot of runway to take.
I think there's more to the story with
Erica. Donald Trump is never politically popular.
Erica Kirk is tied to the funding mechanism of the Republican Party within Connecticut. And there's infighting between these Republicans. I forgot the term that they use, clubhouse Republicans, or I forgot the term, I'd have to look it up. I read a book about it. But the point here is that there is a group of people in Connecticut where there's infighting within the Republican Party between the Bushes, or the ones that supported Bush, kind of the old establishment, and this new establishment that's more aligned with Trump and America First. Erica, in Turning Point, and Charlie Kirk were getting funds from this faction group within Connecticut. All right? J.D. Vance is tied to them. He's what were we told, with J.D., he was a private equity guy, a VC guy. Where do you think that money came from? Do you think it came from him saving his money as a Marine? Do you think he made it when he came out of Yale? No. It's his connections, and most of those connections came from his wife. So Erica is pushing JD. We're seeing in play here, for the ones that don't know behind what's going on behind the baseball stuff. Inside baseball, I should say. It's this faction group within the Republican Party. Because the other side, the anti-Trumpers that are on the Republican side, they are pro-Bush. And that pro-Establishini Bush kind of types.
News we need to do.
So, Jeannie, what happened? Is this a bad move? I thought it was about transparency.
I think it is a bad move. I am always in favor of releasing data and releasing reports. I think you also have a lot of concern. I was just talking about fighting on the right. You have a lot of concern in a very disgruntled Democratic base that this favors people like Kamala Harris. So I do think this is a mistake. And of course, it just doesn't make sense. If you tell people you have a report, but you're not going to deliver it, you're not going to present it, what political kind of savvy does that show, Joe? None. So either don't say you're doing it, but if you say you're doing it, you got to release it, in my view.
And Lisa, I was wondering what they were more afraid of, what Republicans would do with that information or what Democrats would do to themselves.
I think they just would cause themselves unnecessary noise as opposed to just sharing that information internally with the candidates and the campaign managers and all the political operatives that are going to be running these campaigns, rather than releasing it out to the world and allowing the narrative to be that Democrats are weak in a variety of different ways. To me, this is a blip on the screen. Democrats are going to take whatever they've learned and they're going to institutionalize it amongst the politicals, and they're going to hopefully use it to their advantage in the midterms.
Well, I remember the 2012 Republican autopsy, Lisa. The RNC was pretty public with that autopsy, as I remember. What's the point of looking back like this, though, when the electorate has already done its autopsy?
It's incredibly helpful for messaging.
It's
Joe.
not
It's
even an
incredibly-
autopsy. They're using it's postmortem. It's a postmortem report. Autopsy. We're gonna do an autopsy. I love these journalists using words that are like, you know, something from a totally different group, category, field of study. Some of the dumbest people out there are,
because otherwise it is so incredibly expensive to run a campaign that if you don't have information that you can use.
some of the dumbest people out there are journalists, especially mainstream journalists.
Hold for themselves, they're going to use internally, and they're going to use it to their advantage. I would hope. I mean, that's how a politically smart or politically smart run organization would do this kind of thing.
Do we want to ask about the Kennedy Center?
Of course, come on.
I saw the
Did you hate Trump?
You know, we were talking earlier. It's important to remember the Kennedy Center was not actually called the Kennedy Center when they came up with this idea. This had been kicking around since 1938. They finally got it done in 1958, and it was called the National Cultural Center. It was renamed for JFK, of course, after the assassination. Trump is trying to put his name on it. I'm wondering, and either one of you can take this, but at any point, do we reach max Trump naming things after himself saturation, even for the base? Is the ridicule factor factoring in at any point, or do you think people who support the president say the more the merrier?
Oh, it's amazing that they're bitching about Trump naming stuff after his surname. Well, wait a minute here. Bloomberg TV, Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Terminal, Bloomberg Magazine, Bloomberg. Bloomberg does the same fucking thing. And they work for Bloomberg. Dipshits.
He's speaking, at least that's on schedule, about pharmaceutical prices. Christina Ruffini, you'll meet me back here on Monday?
I'll be back.
Or did I ruin
If
this?
you'll have me, I don't know. What's up?
I think I'd love to have you back. So
Thank
let's
you
keep
so much.
going.
Trump can't say, Trump can't name things after his surname, but Bloomberg can. If Bloomberg, as mayor, could have get away with it, he would have renamed New York City called Bloomberg City. Bloomberg. Please go to my store and get the Gladiator barley. This will help to build muscle, bring down inflammation, detoxify your body, and soak up free radicals. You'll recover quicker after a workout by taking this. This is a high-density protein that has micronutrients that you can't get anywhere else. This barley is special, all right? Do some resistance training, take this every day. And by doing this, you're building muscle, you're helping your immune system, you're helping your endocrine system, you're bringing down inflammation, you're helping your brain function because you're keeping that inflammation down, you're detoxifying your body, you're soaking up free radicals, you're slowing down the aging process. Because there's gonna be a day where you're gonna need muscle and you're gonna have to fight. Myotrol. This is really special supplement that you should be taking if you're 40 years of age or older. This will help to build muscle and maintain muscle and reduce atrophy. When you get older, you have a different gene expression profile called epigenetics. Your epigenetics changes over time at certain gates, all right? Well, if you slow down the aging process, you're slowing down that change in the epigenetics, and therefore you're slowing aging, right? You're slowing that aging process. If you're slowing down the inflammation and the free radical buildup and the decline in the cellular metabolism. And when everything's running the way it's supposed to, then your epigenetic profile will stay closer to your youthful epigenetic profile. Take Myotrol. This has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle and to maintain muscle, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. You can benefit from this if you're a youth, if you're in your youth and you are an athlete. You'll gain strength by taking this, and you'll recover quicker in your workout. Now you can take this separately, or you can take this synergistically with the Gladiator barley to build muscle. Now, you don't have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. What you do need is to increase your musculature to slow down the aging process and to control your A1C levels. Oh, diabetes? A lot of it's because you're too fat. All right, so get some muscle. So Gladiator barley, Myotrol. And this is great if you're also an athlete. You can use this as a pre and post workout fuel source to build that strength. So please go to my store, get the Myotrol, and get the Gladiator barley. Digestive enzyme complex. If you're 40 years of age or older, your pancreas doesn't work as well. I don't care how healthy you are. My pancreas doesn't work as well as when I was in my 20s or in my teens. I'm 50 years old. My pancreas doesn't work as well. Everyone's like that. I don't care how healthy you are. Digestive enzyme complex will help to break up the proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids to be able to properly absorb and reduce the stress on your pancreas and on your digestive system. And that way, you're absorbing your nutrients properly. In addition, digestive enzyme complex has bromelain, and bromelain breaks up clots. It's fibrinolytic. And digestive enzyme complex has the proteolytic enzymes that you need to break up glycoproteins. Now, you might say, Dr. Paul Cottrell, you're speaking in Chinese. What's glycoproteins? The spike in 2020. Please go to my store, take the digestive enzyme complex, especially in the winter season. Don't be stupid. All right, let's go back to Bloomberg Live.
S&P advancing 61 points right now. In fact, we are on track as of now for a winning week. On the week, the S&P is up 0.1%. Right now, the S&P is gaining 0.9%, up 61 at 6835. Dow Industrial is up 283, up by about 0.6%. And Nasdaq on this Friday up 1.2%. The Nasdaq 100 index up 1.3%. And the Russell 2000 taking part in the advance up by 0.9%. The Bloomberg Max 7 index also higher, up 0.6, with the 10-year that's currently yielding 4.14%, the 2-year 3.48%. Gold is up $21 the ounce, $43.54. That is a gain of 0.5%. Silver now surging 3%, $67.43 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude oil up 1%, $56.70 on WTI. And Bitcoin, 86,844 Bitcoin right now, up by 1.5%. Earnings news: Nike lower after the company warned that sales will decline this quarter amid persistent weakness in China. And at its Converse brand, we've got Nike shares trading lower today. Right now, we've got Nike down by just about 9%. Also out with earnings here, UPS, actually FedEx. FedEx shares also lower today after earnings. FedEx right now trading lower, trading higher by 0.1%. UPS lower, it is down by 0.9%. So again, recapping the Dow, the S&P, Nasdaq all advancing. S&P up by 0.9%. Balance of Power, the Friday edition continues right now. Back we go to Washington. Once again, your host here is Joe Matthew.
All right, Charlie, we thank you. Nice to see you on a Friday, and thanks for joining us on Balance of Power here on Bloomberg TV and radio. We expect to hear from the president at some point this hour. He was scheduled to be underway at the top of this hour.
Bloomberg TV and radio. But we can't have a building called Trump. in Kennedy Center. No, we can't have that. Is Orange Man bad?
Rally in North Carolina. It's not going to be until much later, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We've got a full day of activities at the White House as we also wait for the Epstein files to drop. This is deadline day. The Department of Justice has until midnight. Back to the issue of affordability. That's the conversation that's being provoked by the White House. So we spoke earlier today on Bloomberg TV and radio with the U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer about what's the cause of the stubborn price inflation that we've seen specifically at the grocery store when it comes to foodstuffs. And talked about this yesterday when the CPI report came out, whether it's meat or eggs up dramatically over this time last year. Here's what Greer told us this morning.
Any good president wants to address affordability, and our president is. And over the past month, we saw dairy, fruit and vegetables, all kinds of prices go down for basic staples. So that's a great development. When we saw inflation earlier, it's really about housing, healthcare, driven by Obamacare disaster. So I don't think that food imports are really going to be an issue for us. The tariff program is really about creating jobs. And
think about this. Think about how crazy this is. This just came out from The Economist, right? Which is a well-respected journal or magazine, I should say. Would you talk to an AI Jesus? A chatbot is offering personalized advice on faith. AI is not artificial intelligence. It's pseudo-intelligence. It's pi or PI. And people are, they're falling in the same trap as the Greeks did with Athena, right? And talking to the oracle. AI Jesus. Oh, crazy. And the sad thing is, a lot of people buy into that stupid stuff.
He had a new poll out this week being cited widely that shows that Americans' approval of President Trump has now slipped to 39%. But really importantly, it's showing that his support among Republicans is eroding. And that's why you're seeing the White House really go out this week with a slew of initiatives, his primetime speech, and now this event on drug pricing. According to the White House press secretary, that's what this is going to focus on, lowering the cost of pharmaceuticals. There was some reporting out earlier today from Reuters that named those companies that could be here for a potential deal at the White House, including AbbVie, Bristol Myers, Gilead, and Merck. As you mentioned, President Trump had signed that executive order in May, urging the administration to negotiate on most favored nation drug pricing, essentially alleging that there are unfair trade practices here, that these companies are giving better rates to other countries. And the understanding has consistently been that if they can bring down the pricing, then these companies are ultimately going to get a tariff reprieve from the administration.
Interesting. So we'll have something potentially new to talk about in North Carolina tonight. What's the plan? He's going to rock him out. He's stumping as well as campaigning.
Well, and what's important about this area in North Carolina. This is North Carolina's first congressional district. It was newly redrawn. These are new maps in North Carolina, and this district had historically gone to Democrats, but now it looks like it will lean Republican. So it feels like we are so long away from next November, but everything really does have to do with the midterms. This is all about campaigning and reaching out to the voters in this area in a critical battleground state, now in a critical battleground district, potentially. But
he's going for Watley, right? Michael Watley's running for Senate, and that's why they chose North Carolina beyond its importance on the map in general.
Right, exactly. This is going to be about down ballot races, because even though President Trump himself isn't on the ballot, this has a lot to do with his agenda going forward and whether or not he can get through initiatives like we saw him get through this year if Republicans don't maintain both chambers of Congress. But you're exactly right. This is the second stop in what's expected to be a domestic tour around the country on the issue of affordability. And that's really where the White House has tried to refocus the conversation. We were talking about it earlier, but in just the last 24 hours, Bloomberg News has a great story out on the terminal looking into just the list of policy initiatives released in the last 48 hours, right? Those checks that are going to service members, some gains for the...
I think the money that's going to the service members is 1776, and also the tax, the tax back because of tariffs. at the beginning of the year for the ones that file their taxes. This is going to be a stimulus for the economy and help people, hopefully. And hopefully that stimulus will drive more job creation. We'll see. I don't know. But here, Bloomberg News, Bloomberg TV, Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Terminal. But we can't have Trump Kennedy Center. Bloomberg's all over the town. Bloomberg, Bloomberg, Bloomberg. Bloomberg, 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 Bloomberg.
The day to
The
go up
ultimate
against
Friday news drop.
against the deadline. And we did hear from the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, earlier, who said that there are so many files that ultimately have to come out. We probably aren't going to get them all today. And, you know, you've been talking about this. There's no enforcement mechanism to make sure that they do all come out, though it did seem that the administration was indicating that they're going to. And of course, this comes after Congress overwhelmingly passed that bill last month, compelling the DOJ to release all of these items. We should say it requires the release of unclassified investigative records, flight logs, travel documents, immunity deals, internal department communications, and papers. The list is really long here, but of course it poses a political headwind for President Trump that he hasn't really been able to get ahead of. And that's been dominating the conversation over the summer, for example. So we'll see how that sort of pairs with him trying to talk about the issue at hand, which is the economy.
Well, it's pretty amazing to hear from Todd Blanche, Deputy Attorney General, telling Fox News that they will miss the deadline. We'll get hundreds of thousands today, but there will still be hundreds of thousands to be released. So they're not going to get this all done as mandated by law.
No, and one of the other questions here is, of course, how the DOJ is going to invoke some of those exceptions. We know that there's exceptions to protect survivors. There's also exceptions here that officials can withhold any information if it's related to an ongoing investigation, which could be complicated by the fact that President Trump did direct the DOJ to.
How is the full release of the Epstein files going to change your life? Is it going to make you richer? Is it going to make you healthier? Is it going to make you smarter? Is it going to do anything that's positive for your life? No. The average person will have no benefit of this whatsoever. So all it is about gossip. All it is, it's about releasing the truth and what is this and what's that. Why do you even care? This is like tabloid news that has truth to it. You know, kind of like, I don't know, Michael Jackson and Madonna having an alien baby.
Be prepared by the end of the day. So is the administration about to break the law?
They're clearly not going to fully comply here. And I encourage everyone to actually just read this law. I mean, it only takes a few minutes. It's short. It's a couple pages. But it really helps you understand what Congress has mandated here, and it will help people evaluate whether or not the DOJ is compliant with what they are required to do.
So was this just a matter of not getting homework done on time, or would that have been impossible knowing?
No, it must be hiding. It must be hiding. The Trump administration must be hiding. There's a phrase. The first time I ever heard the phrase was from a rabbi, right? But I'm sure it didn't come from the Jewish religious community, right? But there's this phrase, and it's, stupid people talk about other people, right? Right? And then average people talk about things, possessions, whatever. And smart people talk about concepts. Now think about that for a second. Concepts are the core for intellectuals, all right? Individuals that are intelligent. The average person it's always talking about things like that handbag, that new handbag or whatever. And then stupid people talk about, do you know what P.D. did in his parties? Do you know what Epstein did? And you have people that have built an advertising revenue stream on YouTube and on Rumble just focused on Epstein. Now, I'm sure the rabbi wasn't wrong. Stupid people focus on gossip about other people, talking about other people. What's going on with Kim Kardashian? Do you need to know? I'm sure you need to know. What's going on with Epstein's files? You gotta know. Gotta know. Gotta know. What's going on? You gotta know. What about what's going on with the financial well-being of Michael Jordan? Gotta know. You have to know.
Consider this lack of enforcement, the political interests of the administration here, and the idea that they can essentially redact anything they want. We might not see anything new today or ever, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are, I guess, there are other...
That might be true. You might not learn anything new. The sky could fall too. An alien ship could land in Times Square. A lot of things could happen.
I occasionally like to see what is in these documents. And once we get them, it's going to take a long time to search them and parse them out. Although, with in the current technological landscape, the processing of this type of information is much easier than it ever has been before. There's a lot to come in the next few weeks to see whether DOJ complies at least in part with the law.
When, assuming this does happen, when the files are released, then considering, Sarah, your experience in the legal field, what will you be looking for? Because you're going to have massive bands of journalists and lawyers digging through these files all weekend. Where do you start?
Yeah, I think some of the most interesting information is going to come in the FBI 302s, which are essentially reports that the agents prepare. So, for instance, if they're interviewing a witness or a person of interest, they are required under their regulations to prepare a report, a 302 regarding that interview. And so the 302s are probably the best starting place for anyone looking at this information to really get a sense of the scope of the investigation that has happened in years past.
Understood. With all of that said, it's entirely possible, if not likely, we're going to be seeing names that have not been invoked in this story yet. To what extent can individuals find out if they are in these files, if they may be prosecuted because they're in these files? How messy is this going to get?
So people that are famous are worried that they may be caught. And everyone needs to know, because they'd rather know about the Epstein file than what's going around over the pond in the UK about subclade K. Gotta know. We have to know.
No involvement in the sex trafficking part of Epstein's life. And so that person may be sort of impugned by the documents that are released, but really there was no basis to levy any criminal charges against that person, and that person was in fact ignorant of the Epstein's involvement in the criminal activity. So those types of issues are really ones that we should consider and are important ones to think about, as particularly when we have a situation like this where we're releasing investigative files. And I think that sort of precise situation is the reason it is so unusual and to release investigative files.
Only got a minute left, Sarah. This has been a fascinating conversation. Remember when Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, said she had the client list and it was on her desk? Of course, we now assume that was not the case. Is there a client list, or are we just digging through a lot of receipts here for the next many days?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see anything like that. I mean, and I think if some sort of very delineated list was there, we would have known about.
Think about how many elderly people that are alone right now because their spouse passed away, their kids moved away for work or whatever, and they're alone. And you have all these journalists and all these lawyers, and you have all these independent investigators looking into the Epstein files once they are released on PDF. Everyone wants to be a Julian Assange Jr. And they could have took the time to actually knock on the door of a neighbor that's elderly and talk to them. Ask them if there's anything that you could do for them. Ask them if they would like to have a meal made for them or to talk. No. Bloomberg journalists need to know what's going on in the Epstein files. This is the reason why our society is going to hell. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the ashwagandha root. It will bring down cortisol levels and help to control your blood glucose levels. That brings down inflammation, helps your immune system in your cardiovascular system. Turmeric brings down inflammation, soaks up free radicals. Lignans helps the immune system, endocrine system, brings down inflammation, and soaks up free radicals. And also helps you to recover from your workouts. Stack them together. This is the third pillar of my protocol. This is a very powerful stack here. This will help to boost up that immune system, slow down the aging process, help for you to recover after working out, bring down chronic inflammation at the joint level, also at the vascular level, and even at the cerebral level. It's a very powerful stack. If you want to slow down the aging process and get healthy, boost up that immune system, take this. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5 and you get $5 off. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift. And maybe you should knock on the door of an elderly person in your neighborhood and give that free gift to them. No, you need to know about what's in the Epstein files. Now, since so many people out there need to know their tabloid news and what's in the Epstein files and who's possibly going to be exposed in the Epstein files, why don't we go to something really important? What is going on with Meghan Markle? Because we need to know, because it's so important.
The way to finance a Mustang is with Ford Credit. We have financing options that turn.
Are Prince Harry and Meghan Markle going separate directions again? And instead of careers, now it's continents. Because it seems like Prince Harry is really angling for a grand UK return. Now, whether that is as a working member of the royal family or not, there's some really interesting indications that Harry is apparently really trying to push for a return to his life in the UK. However, Meghan Markle seems perfectly content to stay in Montecito and attempt and fail to make it as a producer, businesswoman, all these sorts of things. I don't think Meghan Markle for a second wants to go back to the UK. So it's a detente brew between the couple as they want obviously two different things. So guys, we are going to get into this latest sort of revealing piece today, but if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, my name is Brittany. I do provide compelling royal commentary, so please hit that subscribe button. I would absolutely love to have you back. And tomorrow is afternoon tea. So if you want to bring your tea, obviously we discuss some of, let's say, the more minor royal stories of the week or something breaks on Friday. Feel free to join us. It's going to be an awesome, wonderful, and amazing time, and I would love to have you check it out. So if you guys want to click the link up above, I will have the, let's say, the placeholder left for the live stream because I'm not quite sure. We always leave things up to the winds of the day, and it is at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But let's go ahead and get into this piece because, again, there's some interesting indications here that Harry and Meghan are really veering separately. And we got these indications, I think it was last year when it was announced that Harry and Meghan were going to go down two different paths professionally. Harry was going to be a philanthropist, whereas Meghan was going to be an entrepreneur. And so they were already sort of cracking this way. And this year, it seems really apparent that Harry really wants to go back to the UK. I think
Brittany, the royal commentator. This is really important. Stay tuned.
his multiple trips to Canada are a way to re-emphasize his desire to sort of be repatriated into the UK. So the split that's now this is now this. And there's actually a really interesting argument you could say from Jack Royston from Newsweek about what Harry is actually doing and why he's getting this new risk assessment from the...
Do you see what I see? Do you sense what I sense? Hopefully you do, because if you're not, you're stupid. How many times does she have to say really? Really? Stupid people gravitate to crap like this. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 is trading at 6,837. And the WTI for oil is trading at a 56 handle. That's what you need to know. You need to know what the Federal Reserve rate is, what the unemployment rate is, what's going on in the economy, what's going on with your health, what's going around the corner with Clade K. What's going on with the NIH? What's going on with NHS? What's going on in China, in Taiwan? No, we need to know about Meghan Markle and how she's trying to be a Martha Stewart. Really.
Hey, and he goes into the details, so I'll link it so you can watch the whole thing. But what's really interesting is that this risk assessment wasn't done for years, in part because Harry didn't live in the UK. Why take the time and effort for a risk assessment for a guy who may show up in the country, once or twice a year and stay for maybe a week? I mean, honestly, I've probably spent more time in the UK than Harry has over the last couple of years. And so with Harry getting this new risk assessment, he posits the question, which I think is a great one to posit, which is Harry somehow trying to orchestrate some sort of UK return in UK base? And
she has 202,000 followers. On this crap? Who cares about Harry? Who cares? It's not even King Charles' kid. Who cares? I don't really care about Meghan Markle either. I couldn't give two shits. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost so you don't turn into a really, really, really stupid ass. Boomer Boost focuses on multiple systems. It focuses on brain function so you don't turn into her. It focuses on your cardiovascular system so it reduces plaque formation. It helps to rev up your metabolism and your energy levels so your cells are performing properly and you have more vitality. It helps with musculature, helps to control your A1C levels. And when you're controlling your A1C levels, guess what? You're reversing the effects of diabetes. You think Meghan Markle is going to reverse the effects of diabetes for you? No. Will DrPaulCottrell? Yeah. Get the Boomer Boost. This is a very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen here, right? You can read the label on my website. Take this every day. This is the fourth pillar of the protocol to slow down the aging process. This is powerful stuff. Take it every day. It's a month's supply. It's easy to take. And you will feel the effects of this within 72 hours. You will have more energy, a full steady burn of energy throughout the whole day with no spikes. You'll have more vitality. And when you have more vitality, you're going to move around. When you move around, you gain muscle. When you move around, you're actually more active. You have a better life. Instead of sitting on your couch and on the wall is the Queen of England or the King of England paying homage to the gossip of Meghan Markle. So please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. Take it every day. And it stacks really well with Gladiator barley or heirloom barley. And you'll get additional benefits of controlling your A1C levels, especially if you're doing resistance training. The more muscle you have, the better you can control your blood glucose levels. Get the Boomer Boost and slow down the aging process. You're going to feel the effects within 72 hours. You take this over a long period of time, like a year, you're going to notice that you look younger. And your biostats are going to be better. Blood pressure, your metabolism, your energy levels. These are really important because when you pay attention to the blood work and your results, and you pick those areas that are out of the normal range, you can slowly get them back in. But if they're chronically out of range, you start the disease process. You want to minimize that. Or would you rather listen to really, really, really about Meghan Markle? The point I'm making here is there's a lot of stupid stuff on the internet that's not helping you. It's making you age. That's making you stupid. Now, also Boomer Boost is going to help to get rid of that brain fog, allow you to concentrate on tasks, allows you to sleep better. And when you are sleeping better and you have better neuroplasticity, you're improving your memory, you're improving your brain function, you're thinking faster. Really, really, really. Also, please go to my store and get the C60. C60 you can stack with Boomer Boost. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, and avocado oil. Take a teaspoon a day every day. And by doing that, you're soaking up free radicals, slowing down the aging process, reducing stress on your tissues and your cells, improving your mitochondria. So you have more ATP, more energy. Like I said, free radicals, lack of energy, chronic inflammation is a major part of the aging process. If you stop those or mitigate them, you're slowing down the aging process. Take C60, a teaspoon a day, preferably on an empty stomach, every day. I've been taking this every day since 2016. Now, Take a teaspoon a day, and it's going to soak up those free radicals, improve the health of your mitochondria, you'll have more energy. At your vascular level, it's going to prevent plaque buildup. Why? Because it's preventing oxidized LDL, because you're soaking up the free radicals, and free radicals are needed for to oxidize the LDL. Well, if they're not there, you can't oxidize the LDL, and therefore the plaque doesn't form. Pretty simple concept. When you go to your brain level, your neurons have free radicals building up, especially if it's stressed. You can soak those up. And when you soak those up, your neurons are healthier, producing more neurotransmitters. So your actual neural networks are improved. So you think faster, you have better memory. You're improving the health of your neuron and maintaining the myelin sheath. If you're chronically inflamed at the neuron level, you slowly have those neurons die. They slowly start receding. They don't communicate with the other neurons. And eventually, through that recession, the myelin sheath starts to degrade, and then the neuron dies, and it's too late. You got Swiss cheese brain. You don't want that. You don't want that. You don't want to see someone die from dementia or amyloidosis. It's a horrible death. All right? Now, do you want to really, really, really listen to this kind of crap about Meghan Markle? Or would you rather take charge of your life so you can actually enjoy it and be a part of society, not just a cog in the wheel, just absorbing something from a stupid ass? Go to my store, follow my protocol, and slow down the aging process. Why? Because it fucking works.
For the RNC, which you used to speak for, or the administration, do they need to have a deliberate response prepared for when this breaks?
You know, ordinarily, yes. That would be exactly what we would be doing and preparing. I'm reflecting on this week alone, Joe. The president himself said some pretty unpopular and unsympathetic things about a horrible, horrible tragedy that happened in California. And 2 days later, a very revealing report came through from Vanity Fair. So this administration is really good at dodging all of that kind of information over and over again.
Pretty amazing to see Susie Wiles tell Vanity.
Think about that. Break down the word Vanity Fair. And put it in the context of us saying, like the tabloid news back in the 80s at the grocery store. Vanity. Vanity. Frivolous, superficial, vanity, fair. Don't fall in the trap, because you will waste your life if you fall in that trap. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the great supplements that I have, slow down the aging process, get healthy. If you have kids or if you have grandkids or whatever, you want to be there for them. You want to be energetic enough to interact with them. So please go to my store, get the supplements, follow them the way I'm telling you to follow them. You'll slow down the aging process. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. And oh, by the way, you don't need to know about the Epstein files or Meghan Markle.